at-large city councilor, and I am the chair of the Boston City Council's Committee on Post-Audit, Government Accountability, Transparency, and Accessibility. Today is July 24th, 2025, and it is exactly 3:31. In accordance with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, modifying certain requirements of the Open Meeting Law and relieving public bodies of certain requirements, including the requirement that public bodies conduct its meetings in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public, the City Council will be conducting this hearing virtually via Zoom. This hearing is being recorded, and it is also being live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-TV and broadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and FiOS Channel 964. Written comments may be sent to the committee email at ccc.gata@boston.gov and will be made part of the record and available to all councilors. Public testimonies will take it at the end of this hearing. Individuals will be called in the order in which they signed up and will have 2 minutes to testify. If you wish to sign up for a public testimony and have not done so, please email our Central Staff Liaison, Shane Pack, at shane.pack@boston.gov for the Zoom link, and your name will be added to the list. Today's hearing is on Docket 0175, in order for a hearing to audit the cities of Boston's procurement processes, procedures, and progress. This matter was sponsored by myself and was referred to the committee on January 8, 2025. In order of arrival, Shane, if you could let me know if any of my colleagues are here, and the order of their arrival, that would be great. If any, I think.
I don't think anyone has joined us yet, Councilor.
And just so for the record, my colleagues are also supporting the Teamsters, so maybe they'll join us later in our time together. So just really quick, at my discretion, I'm just going to share my opening remarks. So just want to thank our panelists, my colleagues, the council, and the members of the administration, and the public panelists who are showing up today. This hearing focuses on the city's procurement practices. Specifically, this particular hearing is going to focus on White Stadium, the civilian flagger contract, and travel and tourism funding. Each of these cases have raised concerns about decision-making, community engagement, and the implementation of equity commitments. We received a number of concerns from community members regarding how the city awards and manages certain contracts. Specifically, we've heard about rushed timelines, lack of public notice, limited access for small and BIPOC-owned businesses. There are also concerns about how decisions are made, how contracts are structured, and whether or not public dollars are being spent responsibly. Today's goal is to document what took place and to better understand the administration's process and create a pathway for greater transparency and accountability, and more importantly, equity in future procurement practices. In the interest of moving things forward, I will be waiving any open remarks from council colleagues when they show up, just so that we can keep things moving. We will start off with the admin panel, followed by our community panel. So today we are joined by J.C. Brock Wilson, who is the purchasing agent and director of procurement for the city of Boston. Thank you for being here. Chief of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion for the city of Boston, Chief Shagun Idowu, as well as Scott Finn, who is city auditor for the city of Boston. And I believe we have someone from the BPS, or maybe Casey's going to be covering both BPS and DPD. Great. And then from the community, we have Colette Phillips, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Colette Phillips Communication, Ed Burley, who's the Chair of Legal Redress with the NAACP Boston chapter, Larry Ellison, who's a retired BPD detective and former president of FAMLIO, as well as we'll be hearing from other members of the public. And so I am going to turn it over to the administration for their presentation, and you have 20 minutes.
Well, thank you, Counselor. As you already know, this is one of my favorite topics, so always happy to meet to chat about work that we've been doing to address longstanding barriers to participation for local small businesses, particularly those owned by women, people of color, and veterans in obtaining city contracts. So very excited to be able to have this platform to share updates on where we are after a few years. And, also happy to see the community panel that you've pulled together, all who are great folks who do a lot of great work in our community. So happy to see them here. Casey, myself, and Scott are just going to run through these slides. We will hope not to take up the full 20 minutes because we'd love to engage you in conversation and your colleagues in conversation on this issue. So that said, I will turn it over to Casey to kick us off.
Thanks. And do we have this? Do you want me to pull up the slides, or Shane, do you have the slides to pull them up?
I haven't received any slides on my end today.
Okay. Great. Let me do that quickly then. Apologies. I thought they had been sent to you, Shane, so I wasn't prepared to do that, but let me do that right now. Okay. Let me make sure I'm in the right place. Okay. So I'm not as facile with Zoom, so forgive me. One moment. I have to start all the way back at the beginning, so we go back up to the top. Sorry. I'm getting an early preview of the presentation. Okay. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, great. Again, thank you to the council for having us here today. We really appreciate the kind of focus on this topic, and we're excited to walk through it with you today. And I also want to say thank you to members of the public who are joining us today, and we look forward to hearing your questions and commentary. So with that, we're just going to dive into introductions, and I can start first by talking a little bit about the collaborative approach that we have to equitable procurement here in Boston, and then I'll turn it over to the chief and to Scott, as city auditor, talk a little bit about their roles in this as well. While we don't have the Department of Innovation and Technology here today, or the Law Department, I did want to, of course, recognize their role in kind of supporting us in these efforts. So, as I mentioned, I'm representing the procurement department here today as purchasing agent, and happy to be alongside Scott and the chief, our two closest city partners. As Shagun mentioned, we are just excited to be here today. I do apologize up front that I have to leave at 5:30. I need to be at daycare pickup by 6 o'clock, but I'll continue to listen on my phone if there are additional public testimony that I miss. So in procurement, we are focused on helping city departments purchase the goods and services they need to serve city residents. For many years, we have done that by centrally purchasing physical goods for the city of Boston. So that's anything from fire trucks to copy paper to lawn seed for the parks. And we have a great team of buyers here who specialize in each of those areas. We also publish the required advertisements for procurements on boston.gov, the City Record newspaper, and Combis, the state's procurement platform. And we'll talk more about that later. More recently, we've been able to grow our team thanks to city council investment in the FY24 budget. So I wanted to thank you guys for your investment in our department and talk a little bit about what that's been able to do. We've been able to grow our team in a couple of ways thanks to that investment. So one is we were able to expand our vendor support team to ensure that we can respond to all businesses who have questions or issues more quickly and reach people in different ways. The team has about 1,300 requests a month for support from vendors. And so to be able to respond to that quickly and efficiently is incredibly important to provide service to all businesses who are interested in working with the City of Boston and providing that high touch experience with small and local businesses in particular. We also added a team member who's focused on training and development so that our city financial staff who join the city or who are existing staff who need a refresher can really brush up on their procurement skills and lead to better outcomes in our procurement processes. And then finally, we also added a services support unit. For a long time, city departments who were procuring services like consulting or janitorial services or technology did so on their own. And while departments are the experts in what they need, and they work with vendors every day, they aren't necessarily experts in the procurement process. And so we now have a team of 5 analysts who cover city departments and support them in executing those service procurements. And they work very closely with supplier diversity to implement some of our supplier diversity interventions. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Shagun to talk about supplier diversity's role.
Well, Scott's going to pick up and then I'll take over the next slide.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Council, for having us today. So the auditing department's role in this really comes down to our accounts payable unit, which makes up for about half of the city auditor's office. They're basically looking at contracts, making sure that all of our forms are there, that the vendors have filled them out, that the equitable procurement process was followed, and we have that documentation as well. And then most importantly, we're making sure and certifying that there's an appropriation available to fund this contract going forward, which is a great front-end step to how people get paid, and we'll touch into the payment process a few slides from now.
Great. And on the next slide, I'll kind of cover what the framing is of how we approach this. But the Department of Supplier Diversity, now led by Andrea Caruth, who just started a few weeks ago, is focused in kind of tying this all together. So we're responsible for the outreach to businesses, making sure that we're helping local and diverse businesses become certified, which can make them eligible for certain types of contracts through different programs that we have launched during this administration. We also provide technical assistance to businesses, working collaboratively with the Department of Small Business. We hold events, other things to make sure that folks know about upcoming contracts. We've been really strategic about how we're using social media and other media to get word out there about contracts, so it's not just centered on the city website, and various other ways that we're engaging folks. And on the next slide, you'll see, and I won't read through all of this, but these are the 4 principles that we're working under in making sure that we're connecting folks to contract opportunities. So accessibility, again, not just making sure people know about the contracts, but on our side, removing barriers to participation, economic opportunity. This is all the point of why we're doing what we're doing, to make sure that more people are participating in the local economy. Transparency, we'll get to that a little bit later about how we are regularly updating the public on our progress toward goals. And then finally, open competition. The point of all this is to make sure that we are creating even more bidders for opportunities, which at the end of the day actually provides a value to the city of Boston, because as folks are in competition with one another, it will help potentially drive down costs on the part of the city.
Great. So I'm going to dive in and just do a quick overview, which I don't want to spend a ton of time on, about the procurement process itself. Massachusetts, we are governed by 4 primary procurement laws, which are listed at the top of the screen here for goods and services, construction, and design services. And at the bottom is just an illustrative timeline for a larger, more complex project, where you start with identifying the need, evaluating the existing market of businesses that provide that need, and then heading towards contract award and payment. And this is where the partnership across these departments is incredibly crucial for supplier diversity, procurement, the department, and auditing to work closely together so that this process works as smoothly as possible, and that we're doing the outreach to the diverse businesses, as Shagun spoke about. Scott, I wanted to hand it to you to talk a little bit about that invoice and payment portion of this as well.
Thank you. So in an average week, the auditing department processes about 3,300 payments, totaling about $46 million a week. This process map here kind of maps out the process that is followed to get payments to go out timely. We send out payments once a week. Which is referred to as the warrant process. Anything that is received by Tuesday morning and there is a budget available and all steps have been followed, the payment will go out that Friday. Typically, when we run into payment issues, it is because processes up front weren't followed by department staff throughout the whole city, which then can delay the payment processes. We've made a lot of progress on training staff, offering more resources. We have a finance academy available online for staff to refer to documentations, and then we do certain things like office hours, and Casey's going to talk a little bit about training coming up as well. So we've seen a lot of progress in minimizing the amount of delays, but they do still happen, and we continue to work through different thoughts on how to make that a little bit more timely.
Okay, well, so now this is the great stuff where you get to talk about, Counselor, and want to take a few seconds just to acknowledge Counselor Mejia, because, you know, I'll say as one of the OGs on this issue, during my days at the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, you know, I had the great fortune of being able to work with Counselor Mejia on matters of supplier diversity and procurement at the city. And Counselor, you know, look at the progress that has been made as a result of the advocacy and working across city departments to help make sure we were delivering on key promises that the city's been making to particularly communities of color. So on this slide, I'm not going to spend all the time on these, but just to say that the key things to pick up on for this particular slide, and for the benefit of the general public that are joining us, we measure procurement in two ways. One is on the contracts, the value of the contracts we're awarding, and then what we're spending on the contracts that have been awarded. So those are always going to be two different numbers that we are sharing when it comes to this particular issue. And so I think for the fiscal year 2024, July to June of 24, we were very proud last November to stand up in the bowling building with Mayor Wu to be able to share that for the first time in the city's history, we spent more than $100 million with businesses owned by people of color in just one single fiscal year. It's taken the city many years, you know, cumulatively to reach a figure like that. And so we're very proud of the progress that we're making. Of course, there's always more to do, but just spending a couple of seconds to acknowledge the significant progress that the administration in partnership with the council have been making. On the next slide, we'll see on the matter of awards, it was also a banner year for the city of Boston as we awarded contracts worth more than $230 million to businesses owned by women and people of color. Also the first time in the city's history that that has happened. And you'll notice these numbers after the red dots show where we were as of the third quarter of 2025. We're still processing the information for the last quarter. So the fact that on the previous slide and at this one, we were already kind of where we were for the full previous fiscal year means that we're going to exceed those numbers this year, which we're proud of. And so, you know, these slides just continue to show that we are making year upon year improvement. And we'll look forward to working with the councilors on continuing to beat these records. On the next slide, part of the way that we're doing this, you know, always important to note that a business does not need to be certified to get a contract with the city of Boston, but certification allows us to track who is getting these contracts. And so I know that, you know, the team has done a great job of streamlining the process for becoming certified. We have an agreement with the state that it's a reciprocal arrangement, that if you get certified at the state, we'll honor it here and vice versa. We have now a new relationship with the city of Cambridge, who wants to follow our lead based on our progress to also honor certifications that happen in the city of Cambridge. But at the end of the day, we see again on this slide, year over year improvement on ensuring that we are getting the information out there to Boston's small businesses, getting them certified. And you'll see the tremendous growth because we're beginning to show the value of being certified, which for a long time was elusive for our businesses who didn't see the point of getting certified because they did not see that businesses owned by people of color or women were getting contracts. Other important thing here, I know this is something that's come up in previous council hearings, and it's something that I was pushing for at BECMA, and that I know that our partners in procurement and supply diversity and others have been wanting to make happen. We have an MOU with the state to now begin delineating by race and ethnicity who is under the minority banner, so that we know specifically which communities are receiving contracts.
Thanks, Shagun. Yeah, we're really excited about that advancement as well. And I want to talk about one of the tools that we have that has, as Shagun mentioned, has made it more attractive to become certified in Boston and to work with us. And that is the inclusive quote contract, or we call the IQC. This is something that in partnership with City Council, the mayor filed a home rule petition in 2022. And this legislation allows city departments and buyers to use an inclusive quote contract process for purchases up to $250,000 if they get quotes only from certified businesses. And again, this really was only implemented in 2023 after the home rule petition passed. And we've been really excited to see the use of it immediately take off and continue to increase. And this is because it's a win-win for the city and for certified businesses. We are allowing departments to simplify their procurement process, get a vendor in place more quickly, and creating opportunities that are exclusive to certified businesses. So if you're not certified, this opportunity is not available to you. And we've been in 2025, we've been able to do 28 IQCs worth $3.7 million. We have hosted last year we also hosted a citywide training during Supplier Diversity Week to train staff on how to use this and leverage this new procurement method. And we're continuing to push and encourage the usage of this, and we hope to see further increases year over year. So this is something we're continuing to track, and we would like to see this grow even more as time goes on. I also wanted to talk a little bit about some advances in reporting. We have doubled down on our efforts to be more transparent and open with our data. So for the past 2 years, we have published an equity and city contracts report, providing updates on spending data, certifications, as well as some of the initiatives we'll talk through later. That's what you'll see here on the right-hand side of the slide. And after the first year of publishing that report, we heard from community members and advocates that they wanted to see the raw data itself and be able to slice it and look at it however they wanted to. So we are very proud that last October we announced, we launched the city contracting dashboard, which is also on the right pictured here today. And this is a joint effort across procurement, auditing, supplier diversity, and Do It. And for those listening at home, you can check it out at boston.gov/equitable-procurement. This dashboard visualizes the city's progress. So the charts that Shagun presented earlier about contract award and spending actually came directly from this dashboard. So the community can see it whenever they please and can kind of look through the raw data itself. We also are posting the data on Analyze Boston, which is our open data platform. So you can download the data yourself if you'd like to do some analysis in Excel. And in the future, as Shagun mentioned, with that race and ethnicity data, we hope to integrate that information into the dashboard as well. I also wanted to take the moment to thank City Council again for its investment in the procurement department. Without the 2 data analysts who we have in procurement, the creation of this dashboard and increasing our transparency and accessibility wouldn't have been possible. So we're really excited about this. It's updated on a quarterly basis. And as you have a chance to take a look at it, whether you're a city council member or a member of the public, we invite you to give feedback. There's a link on the bottom right, and that feedback comes directly to us, and we look forward to continuing to improve this dashboard as we move forward.
So in addition to kind of beefing up our different departments and similarly grateful to the council for approving budgets for supply diversity over the last few years, that's allowed us to increase capacity on that side as well around policy engagement, on community engagement, certification, et cetera. It's allowed us to play a more involved role in city projects, which, as we see before us for White Stadium, is the first of the projects that we get to kind of get our hands around to make sure that we are fully involved in helping to ensure that local small businesses not only are aware of the opportunities that are coming up, but have higher chances of being awarded those contracts to participate in the rebuilding of a major site in their neighborhood. We'll see here. So in addition to what Casey has shared in terms of transparency and reporting out, we've developed a separate way of kind of looking at what we're doing with the White Stadium project. You'll see the screenshot here of similar to what we do for supply diversity across the entire city. We're drilling down on this project, showing how much we've spent to date overall on the project, how much of that has gone to certified entities, what that percentage is, but then also seeing line by line who's receiving these contracts. These numbers at the bottom here in the red and the blue may not match up specifically with that screenshot you see up top, because we got word earlier today about another contract worth $100,000 that was awarded to a local minority company. So that's been added to the total figures down below, where $7.5 million has been spent to date out of that $3.7 million awarded to women and minority businesses, short of $1 million that's gone specifically to locally owned businesses on the few contracts that were available on just this particular phase of the project. And you see the breakdown of what that 3.7 equals. I will say, again, to the involvement that we have here, we're doing more than just sending out emails and saying, here's the opportunity. In addition to, doing things like that, we have put together a supplier diversity advisory group of business serving organizations and community members like the Franklin Park Coalition, who are on the ground and who have the relationships and can spread word to those in their network of opportunities. And we've also been in community. We've had so far 3 different contract opportunity fairs in Roxbury, in Dorchester, that have garnered a couple hundred folks, contractors who have come out. A couple of the folks that you see listed on the left here attended those contract opportunity fairs, and as a result of the relationships they built, received the contracts that they have today. And so we know that these engagement opportunities are working. Oh, if I could just mention, on the website you can say there, Casey, but on the website for White Stadium, for our supply diversity initiative, in addition to seeing what we've done so far, on the second page of that, you'll see the upcoming opportunities, which we are regularly updating, again, for transparency and accessibility. That's something that I know, at least myself as an advocate, always wanted to see what's coming up, how much is it worth, so I can get folks ready. Again, it's an opportunity to kind of share that information out and make sure folks are getting access. And those contracts, totaling it earlier today, at least on the city side, are worth just north of $60 million. When the team, updates their numbers, those numbers will increase. So just to say that, although so far on the few contracts that have been awarded overall, we're at close to $4 million that have gone to women and minority businesses, there's an opportunity for much more of those contracts to be awarded to similar business groups.
Thanks, Chief. So I wanted to dive in, and we'll just touch on some of the initiatives we're working on collectively quickly, and happy to dive more into it during questions. One of the things that we've been collectively working on is tackling ease of use and accessibility for both businesses and internal staff. So externally, we know that making our standard contracting documents and forms easier to read and easier for businesses to understand what they need to fill out, what we're looking for is really important. And so you can see some of that visually here on the slide and what we've done to make templates for our request for proposals and invitation for bids that have a summary on the front that tells the vendor what's most important, when things are due, and what are the kind of key things about the project that they need to know before they respond to the bid. Some of the other examples are about taking out legalese writing, adding clear instructions and contact information if you have questions. These are really simple but very important changes to ensure that a business knows what we're looking for and how they can be successful. I think there is always more work to do in this front in making our procurement process more easy, but this is a big step in the right direction. Internally, we've launched a new procurement training, which I mentioned at the top. And since January, we've trained over 100 city staff on our city procurement and financial system. And each person had the opportunity to receive 8 hours of in-person training and hands-on training. We know our city staff are our biggest asset. And so we really believe that this training will help streamline their interactions with vendors and make sure that we're following best practices in partnership with supplier diversity. I also wanted to put a plug in and ask for the City Council and the public's help in spreading the word about City Record. And if you don't know what City Record is, it is a digital newspaper that is published weekly that highlights all advertised contracting opportunities with the city. And last summer, we transitioned to that free digital newsletter. Previously, we had a paid printed subscription, which you'll see on the left-hand side, that was sent via mail. And we recognized that this was an opportunity to expand access and get the word out more broadly, which is why we moved to this digital free newsletter. Since launching, we've added over 340 new subscribers, and we would love your help in spreading the word about this resource and encouraging businesses to subscribe so they can see these opportunities as quickly as possible. We know too, though, that advertising is just one part of the puzzle, and one thing I know I've heard from both Councilor Mejia and Councilor Worrell is about letting people know early so that they can plan ahead for opportunities that they might be interested in. And so collectively, we've done that this year through the Equitable Procurement Buying Plan, which we launched in March of this year, which was the earliest ever that we were able to launch this buying plan. It has 600 planned procurement opportunities for the coming fiscal year. That data has been validated through meetings with city department staff, and we've been able to have over 1,300 views since publishing. Councilor Mejia, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, only because y'all said y'all were not going to use all 20 minutes, and y'all are going over those 20 minutes. So I wanted to just make sure that we give some time for our panelists, and we also have public testimony. So I want to just make sure that we honor everyone's time, and just wanted to do a quick time check. Oh,
we're pretty much done. Actually,
yeah, we have two more slides.
Well, those two slides are me, and I don't need to. I'll just say, Councilor, that the only slide that matters next is the. Again, you and I have talked about this, prior to my coming in here. There were two things we always heard in terms of why businesses owned by people of color, why women-owned businesses, et cetera, weren't getting access to contracts. And those two reasons we always heard were we can't find them or they don't have the capacity. So I've already talked about what we're doing around certification. We're at 1,000. Clearly, our folks have been here, we found them. The other piece is on the next slide, the SCALE program. And you all approved this way of spending ARPA a couple of years ago. This is to address the capacity issue. A lot of our businesses are not just small, they're micro. And so there were contracts that we did not have access to because we didn't have the experience, because we didn't have the staffing or the capital to do it. Well, this program is offering grants of up to $200,000 to 27 businesses that have been selected. And it's across 5 different categories of spend where the city spends some of the most money and where some of the largest contracts are. And so this program is meant to help build the capacity of these businesses to make them eligible to bid on these contracts and compete. You know, we can't guarantee that they'll get them, but at least we get rid of this idea that, you know, Black and brown and women-owned businesses do not have the capacity to do work in the city of Boston. So that said, we are done. We appreciate the additional time, and we look forward to your questions.
Yeah, thank you. I just really want to acknowledge Chief Idiwu's work. Prior to joining the administration, we worked in partnership around some of the issues that we're going to be, discussing today. So it's always humbling for me to see the work that our office has done to help support so many small businesses across the city of Boston. And then just the actual, intentionality around accountability and transparency with the dashboard and all the things. So, change does happen. Sometimes it's a little bit slow, but these are the sort of things that really help us see what progress looks like. I noticed, I believe that we've also been joined by two of my other colleagues, Councillor Weber and Councillor Roral. So thank you for being here. And I also noticed that the administration, when we noticed the hearing, we have this open hearing order and that we use it for very specific issues. And so we uplifted the civilian flaggers and the White Stadium and also travel and tourism. So I'm hoping that in our time together, we can do a little bit of a deeper dive in some of the things as it relates to those very specific procurement processes that have been flagged for us. So really do appreciate you all giving us the big picture overview and some of the things that we've been doing, or that y'all been doing. I say we just because I always feel like I'm part of y'all anyways, but yes, that we have been working on the council here. So I'm going to kick it over to my colleagues for the first round of questions. My hope is that the administration will be staying here throughout the duration of the time together, so that, there is an opportunity for us, if there's something that is said during the community panel, that we have an opportunity to just get some clarity. As you know, usually my hearings lead with community and then we go to the administration. We wanted to do things a little bit different because we wanted to provide people some context and some historical background before we dive deeper into questions, so that people understand things from the way we do business, right? So thank you for taking the time, for giving us all of that great information. So I am going to, and the last thing I'll say before I kick it over to my colleagues is that for us, this is really, and I'm glad that Chief Idiwu mentioned it in his opening remarks, that this is really an opportunity for the administration to shine a light and to help people understand kind of like some of the nuances that we may not have privy to, and like to help us understand the way you function and also some of your outcomes and the work that you've been able to do. So I really hope that you move within that spirit as we continue to have this conversation. So thank you for doing that. I'm gonna kick it over, I believe, who was first? Councillor Weber, I believe, in order of arrival. So Councillor Weber, you now have the floor and 5 minutes.
Looks like he might have fallen off. I saw him fall off earlier.
Okay, great. Well, not great that he fall off, but I'm keeping it moving. Councillor Roral, who is not only the chair of Ways and Means, he's also the chair of small businesses. And so I know as a small business owner, this conversation is also just as equally as important to him. So Councillor Roral, you now have the floor. Councillor Roral, you now have the floor. And if someone from his team is listening in, let's ping him, let him know. Oh, is he still here, or he's acting like he is? Shane, what happened?
I still see him in the room here, Madam Chair, but maybe we should move into other questions.
Yeah, so let me go with my questions, and then if Councillor Roral comes back, we'll come back to him. As I mentioned, this particular hearing order, we wanted to do a deeper dive into 3 very specific procurement processes that we want to better understand. And Casey, I believe you're going to walk us through and help us understand some things, and maybe Chief or Scott, but whoever can take questions, please feel free to jump right in. At our last, I'm going to speak first about the White Stadium. At our last White Stadium hearing, we heard that the community wasn't involved before the RFP was released. And I'm just curious, who decides when or how to start the RFP process, and kind of like, what is your procedure around that? Because if I asked the question directly, and I was told that there was no community engagement process by Chief Irish when I asked the question about what did that look like, and I was told that there was no process for community engagement. So can you tell me why that was, or if there was community engagement, can you, on the record, just let us know what that looked like and what it entailed?
I'm going to let the chief jump in here only because I wasn't in this role at that time, counselor, so I can't speak with great detail about it. It was previous to my time in this role.
And I want to make sure I understand the question as well. So is it that, or was what was being asked for, that community participate in the shaping of RFPs, or that there be conversation before an RFP is drafted, or I just want to make sure, yeah.
Yeah, so normally, right, when there's going to be something that's going to be put out to bid, there is some sort of community engagement input and process, because we, especially when it's public land and we're utilizing taxpayer dollars, that there is definitely a structure or a framework where community has a say or has an understanding of what is being planned, so that they can help inform that plan. And I'm just curious if I'm making up scenarios in my head and that is not the case, and if it's not, then it would be also great to know.
Yeah. I mean, my understanding of generally the process is that there's no particular engagement in the shaping unless it's like it's affirmatively done or proactively done, but that the process itself of shaping an RFP only requires the department to put that RFP together.
Yes, I understand that piece. I guess the nuance in regards to White Stadium is that it's, there's the landmarks and conservation. There's a series of different, players, if you will, in that piece. And I'm just curious kind of like what that looked like in regards to, there's the White Fund, right? So it's also a piece of land, if you will, that is also associated with a fund. So I'm just curious, kind of, it just felt like there should have been, if there wasn't, at least some sort of community process. And I'm just curious if that's not the case.
Well,
Because,
I mean,
yeah.
no, I appreciate that. That is helpful clarity as to what's being asked for here. So, I'll have to rely on what my colleagues shared at the previous hearing and just say that, like, I'm aware that there were community meetings and engagement. I don't know if it happened before or after. And then again, generally for RFPs in whatever form, I'm not aware that like there's not a requirement that you engage. But however, on, the specific issue you're talking about, or just projects in general, if the request is that there be community engagement before that happens, I'm sure that's something that that we would explore. But for this particular project, I cannot remember if the community meetings happened before or after it went out.
Yeah, and then the other piece around the RFP process was that it wasn't fully publicly known. I don't know if it wasn't publicly known. Like, not a lot of people knew about the RFP process or the opportunity to submit for consideration. And I'm just curious if you can kind of walk me through kind of like how it ended up from, was it an idea, then it became an RFP? Can you just help us understand kind of like how we went from the RFP to the one bidder or two, or however, like what What was that process like?
Well, generally speaking, and I'll, Casey can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, which is usually 99% of the times, but I'll do my best not to be wrong for you, Counselor, given time. So, yes, departments will, think of what is a need that I have. They will assess what is the value of, that I'm trying to put out there, and that will determine which type of contract is put out there, usually RFP if it's more than 50, in this case, definitely. And so, so that was determined. In terms of how it gets put out, this is actually an area that we want to, like, supplier diversity wants to lean in more into, because right now, departments put out RFPs and then promote them in various ways. Some will just do it through the portal and through what Casey shared earlier with the newsletter, which a lot of folks have signed up on that, and generally folks have been successful about getting the word out that way. On our side, we have been, more proactive in developing social media graphics, on, reaching out to folks, et cetera. And so we're trying to lead by example, but then also kind of develop, like, what is the best practice, and then share this across all the other city departments. So for this one, I believe the RFP was put out there, and, if you're, and that's how people get access to it. It's publicly made available and by law, and whoever saw it put in a bid.
Okay. So how many bidders did we have?
I wasn't on the committee for this. I'm not sure if there was more than the one that I think you all are talking about.
Okay. And because of that, and because of what we're trying to do is really be incredibly transparent and accessible so that everyone could have access to amazing opportunities such as this, right? I'm just curious, what lessons have we learned from that process that we could do differently moving forward, A, and B, there was some discussion about, or were there discussions with the folks who won the bid prior to the RFP going out?
Yep, there were. I wasn't part of those discussions. And then in terms of lessons learned, I mean, often for large contracts, the city often only gets one, maybe two bidders on them, just on the capacity piece, which is, I think, on the flip side, I'm not going to say it's a lesson. This is a desire that we've had for a while, before, again, coming in here, you and I have talked about this on how we break up. I mean, on White Stadium, I don't know how functionally, I don't know what it would have looked like to break it up, but on others like trash and snow and stuff like that, we're considering how to break it up. So those are, again, I wouldn't say it's a lesson. It's just something we want to expand to other large contracts. But I would say, I'm happy if this wasn't shared at the previous hearing. I mean, I'm sure it was, but, I think obviously being more intentional in terms of community engagement, if there's the feeling that was not done appropriately or, in a way that satisfied folks. So I think we can walk away with that today.
Yeah, so I thank you for that. Casey,
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead,
One
Casey.
of the lessons I was going to share, just reflecting on hearing you two talk about it, and something I know is a priority for us collectively, is by procurement law, there are requirements for what we have to do for advertising, but that doesn't mean that we can't do more than that to get the word out there, right? To go beyond what's just required of us. And so that's something that I think continues to be a priority of, okay, we need to check the boxes of what is required by procurement law, but then there are opportunities to go beyond that. And that is, I think, really important. And not every city department has the resources to do that. So that is something that I think for us to, it's something we can get more creative about in the future.
And I'm taking chair privileges because my colleague has not come, so I'm gonna take up everybody's time here. I'm taking more than the 5 minutes that I would have allotted everybody. But Councilor Roel, let me just ask one more question. Then I see you, and then I'll kick it over to you. But just really quick, I'm just curious in terms of just the White Stadium in particular, and then I'm going to ask a question about the civilian flaggers. Is that for me, and this is just me just thinking about kind of process, there should have been some sort of consideration when we only had one bidder, and it was such a accelerated timeline. It was really fast how the RFP came out, then the application was submitted, then it was approved. It just felt incredibly fast, or at least from an outsider looking in. And so I'm just curious, as a practice, wouldn't it, if we want to give people as much opportunities as possible, wouldn't the best practice would have been to not make a decision by just one bidder, but allowing us, the same way that the law is that we have to go with the lowest bidder, right? That is normally the way when we're, especially around, because we've been fighting around, BIPOC and women-owned businesses, and we always get told, oh, the contracts go to the lowest bidder, blah, 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 right? So if that's the case, if the contracts go, the RFP goes to the lowest bidder, this particular RFP, right, when people look at the tax, when people look at how much it's costing us, that's not the lowest bidder. Whereas there is already a proposal that has been sponsored by community, the NAACP and others, that is a lower bid to do the same amount of work, specifically if we're just going to be focusing on the renovation so that our kids can have access to a quality facility, that there was a proposal put forth by community, obviously after the fact, that was the lowest bid. So this is where, for me, the tension and the disconnect comes from, and I'm wondering who can speak to that, if we can justify that in terms of kind of like the process, and also the reality that there was a bid that was lower, but we chose not to use it.
Well, a couple of things, Councillor. So one, I just want to clear up a misconception, because exactly what you shared towards the end there in terms of what we have been told is a misconception. I sometimes have to individually correct with folks the notion that we have to be the lowest bidder. So there are three categories when it comes to Chapter 30B, which is the state law governing procurement. There's the sound business, which is anything under 10,000, where a department can say, I need 50 copies of whatever. It's going to cost me $2,000. I'm going to call this person to do that. We don't have to go through a whole process. And generally, before we came into these roles, that was the city's way of helping get contracts to women and people of color, which is why the numbers were always so low. Because if you're getting under 10,000 like that, you need many hundreds to get to a good number. The second category is the written quote contract, which is anything between 10 and 50,000. This is the area where it's a shortened process. It could be like 1 or 2 pages. Here's a thing that I need, but it's going to cost me more than 10,000, less than 50. That does have to go to the lowest bidder. RFPs are for contracts that are valued at more than $50,000. That is a subjective category. Okay, it's lowest, most responsible. Most responsible is not a quantitative figure. It's subjective. So it's really based on the committee and the folks that are making the decisions as to, okay, if I have a bid for 60,000, one for 80,000, I'm going to go with the 80,000 because we as a committee believe that this bidder has more capacity, has a better record, et cetera, to deliver on whatever we're asking for. So just to say, for folks that are bidding on anything over 50,000, please bid on those things, and obviously don't try to charge the city, crazy amounts of money, but committees do have, anyway. So just to say, I just want to clarify that. Seeing the folks that are on the call.
Yeah.
In terms of
that clarification, but I also just want to underscore the point that I'm trying to make.
Oh, yeah.
It may have not been the exact kind of like what I'm trying to communicate. So let me just.
No, I understood. I understood, Councillor.
In terms of just kind of like being fiscally responsible and really helping to. We had an opportunity as a city to both be fiscally responsible and honor community voice by being a little bit more nimble, if you will, with a proposal that was at a lower cost And so that's the tension that I'm struggling with, is that we opted to spend more, right? Than the counter proposal. And so that's kind of like that in the dynamics of kind of like how we do business, it just doesn't really make sense. And that's what I'm trying to help understand. And then the
yeah.
other piece is, if you could just clarify for me, the time frame of, like, if only one person bid it, there is a cause for pause, because we want to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to give as many people opportunities to bid on city contracts. And so that's kind of where, for me, I need a little bit of understanding of how we end up here.
Well, and just to say, and I apologize, so I just wanted to, I did not mean to connect the response on the 3 buckets to the White Stadium specific. It's just for, because I agree with you. Like, again, before this role, even I was out there parroting, like, got to be lowest. But that's always impossible for our businesses, because we're very small and we can't afford to, be the lowest bidder sometimes, because our businesses would collapse. And so I just always like to make sure that I'm letting folks know that actually here's what it is, and, put your best foot forward, and, we get to choose quality in those contracts. So now, separate from White Stadium, I will say, it's not a great answer, but to say that it depends in terms of when we receive one bidder. Now, I know we're talking about White Stadium specifically, but just to say across the board, it depends. Number one, on the need of the department. Sometimes, if there's a time crunch, there can't always be an effort to go look for and encourage others to apply. I will say that, generally across the board for contracts outside of the White Stadium issue, we are working to make sure that major contracts have a long lead time, which is so in terms, for example, the buying plan is actually very helpful. It's not just helpful for businesses to know what's coming up in what quarter or what month for the city. It's also helpful for departments, because it forces them to think about, how am I going to spend this money if awarded by the council on this particular contract? When am I going to put it out, right? And so I think that allows for, first of all, getting the RFP done earlier, but also allows us to, and one thing that wasn't put on the slides here, my team now knows when contracts worth more than $250,000 are going to hit the streets. We have to give approval before it actually goes out. And so we get to then use that information to go find, first of all, ensure that the departments have a plan for reaching out to diverse businesses, certified businesses, and then also to help in the marketing of those contracts so that folks are aware. On White Stadium in particular, again, I'm going to lean on comments that may have been made at the previous hearing. I can't, again, I was not in the room. I cannot speak to, I know that there was an urgency to try to get someone just because of the state of the building, but I would not be honest if I'm sitting here answering some of the questions, because I wasn't part of those conversations. But just to say that, we are learning from these questions how to make sure that in the future, especially for major public projects, that there is a different process that is not just abiding by what state law says.
So I'm going to finish my round, and then I'm going to send it over to Councilor Worrell. But I do want, just for some clarity, there was once upon a time some discussion that the particular project was looking for a home, the Boston Unity, and there was some consideration for it being in Millennial Park in East Boston, and it ended up in White Stadium. I don't know if you can confirm or deny that.
I wasn't part of that conversation as to
Okay.
where they wanted to go.
All right, so thank you for that. And then Casey, I just quickly about the civilian flaggers. I believe there was a bid. I believe the person was of color, or women-owned, and that bid did not move through the process. But the bid did go to a former commissioner, Ed Davis. And so I'm curious if we are here to uplift and support and push for women and people of color in terms of the RFP process. How come prevented us from meeting that moment in terms of equity and creating opportunities for women and people of color.
Thanks, Counselor. Yeah, I brought some information about, I know you had mentioned you wanted to speak about this today, so I brought some kind of just details about the timeline and process I wanted to share for those listening who may not be familiar with it. As the counselor mentioned, as folks know, we are reforming the paid detail system to create more job opportunities for Boston residents and hopefully create better coverage of paid details to improve public safety. So as a part of that, 2 RFPs were issued over the course of this winter. One was for the technology that facilitates paid details. I won't speak on that because I don't think that's where your question is directed. But the second RFP was one for the third-party management of additional detail personnel. So that's the RFP you're speaking about, Counselor. It was issued on January 2nd. Of 2025, and proposals were due on Valentine's Day, 2025. So about 6 weeks later, I believe BPD and team held a virtual question and answer session and published written Q&A for vendor questions and concerns. I know they did receive a number of vendor questions there. 2 vendors submitted proposals. So to your question, Counselor, so First Armor Protection Services submitted a proposal, and Ed Davis Company submitted a proposal as well. That's the vendor who you mentioned who was eventually awarded. I wanted to speak to a little bit about the evaluation criteria that was used in the RFP. I was not on the evaluation committee myself, but I was able to pull this information because I thought it was important to share. So the proposal was measured on a number of things: proposal clarity, vendor qualifications and experience, hiring and recruitment, training and management, and detail assignment and payment, I think was the final one. And so I think as you look at the proposal criteria, Counselor, there are a number of things in there that I think are supportive of what you were talking about. In particular, vendors got extra points if they had a track record of success in managing projects across Boston's neighborhoods, and familiarity with different languages, cultures, et cetera. So that was kind of incorporated in there as well as demonstrated experience in recruiting employees representative of the civilian population they would serve as a civilian flagger, as well as kind of a detailed recruitment plan of how they would recruit people across the neighborhoods of Boston. There were also, though, a number of criteria that were incorporated, that were agreed upon as part of the collective bargaining agreement with the police union. And those were things that were also incorporated, like, an in-depth knowledge of the detail system, that they hire employees versus independent contractors, and have, extensive experience training people in traffic control, and other, kind of basic things like that. So I think there's a wide variety of things in there. And in reviewing kind of the evaluation committee's work, Ed Davis Company was rated the most advantageous, which building off what Chief talked about earlier, on RFPs is a combination of things, right? It's not just price, but it's also these other qualitative factors. And Ed Davis measured better on those qualitative factors as well, measured better on the qualitative factors, and came in at a lower price. But again, price isn't the only thing when it comes to RFPs. It's also about the qualitative factors. I did want to clarify, because it's something I know I've heard, and is that for the folks who will be hired, you do not need to have a law enforcement background. You can be a civilian of any sort. You do not have to have experience with law enforcement to be a civilian flagger. So we do want to make sure that people know that you do not need to have law enforcement experience to be a flagger.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. Thank you. And I know I've gone over everybody's time. But there's a big conversation, so I'm going to kick it over to my council colleague, Councilor Worrell, who's been patiently waiting for his turn. Councilor Worrell, you have as much time as you want. No, just joking. You have the floor, Councilor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everyone that is here today, panelists, and also to all the public who's here to discuss this very important conversation. And then I just want to say congratulations, not only to this administration, but to also past administrations on the progress that has been made in city contracts. One of my first questions is around the data. And I know when you presented the data, is that only city operating dollars, or is that also some of the quasi agencies, Boston Water and Sewer, Boston Public Health Commission? And does it also include the BPS?
Great question, Counselor. So it does include the Boston Public Schools. It does not include the Health Commission or Water and Sewer, because those do not run through our financial system. So we don't have the ability to draw that data in. But BPS is included. And also now, of course, the Planning Department, now that it's a part of the city, is included as well.
Awesome. Have we ever looked to see, as a city, how our quasi agencies are faring when it comes to awarding city contracts to MWBEs?
I haven't been a part of those conversations, but I would love to explore it and happy to have more conversations about it.
Yeah, I believe, Councillor, as part of the previous disparity study, there was a look at a couple of the quasi-agencies in terms of regular reporting. I think that's I'll take it as an excellent suggestion and definitely something that we will be talking about after today.
Awesome, thank you. And then sticking with the data, something in the BRJP policy, Boston Residents Job Policy, it's not only the diversity, we're looking at local residents. Do we have that data when it comes to MWBEs that we're awarding contracts to? Like how many of them are local businesses or local residents?
So as kind of a BRG, and I wish Jody were here to help us with this, but yes, obviously those figures are collected by Jody's team and the Office of Worker Compliance.
No, sorry. No, I'm not saying the BRJP. I'm saying like with that framework and that intention, right? Like, do we know when we're awarding city contracts to MWBEs, how many of them are local businesses, and then how many of them are also local residents?
Thank you.
So, on the certification front, this is what our small local designation allows us to track. So whenever folks are getting certified, we always try to encourage them to get as many of the certifications that are relevant to them as possible so that we can track, what categories they fall under.
And Counselor, that is available on the dashboard as well. We didn't show it in the slide deck today just for time purposes, but the breakdown of spending with local and small via that certification that Shagun just spoke about is available on the dashboard to the public and of course to you as a city councilor.
Awesome, that's great to hear. And then on top of that, I'm not sure if through the RFP process or the contract bidding process, because the idea, right, is when we award MWBEs, that it trickles down not only to the owner, but to the the individuals that are helping the owner perform a service or do a job. So do we have, I guess my question is like, is there I guess in the near future, just to kind of see like the impact, right, on the 12%, like all your efforts, right, when it comes to not just the owner, but like the working class individual, the employees of the MWBE, to see how this has more of a ripple effect across the city.
Well, Councillor, I'll say that please don't be surprised when you see a budget request to fund a research project to help us do just that. I think that's a great idea. Currently, beyond anecdotal evidence and, what's shared with us or, us knowing these businesses. We don't currently have that. But I think, we can definitely, work with your office and others to develop something about not only understanding past impact, but also developing a framework for collecting that data in a more consistent way.
Awesome. And then I believe my last question will be I think like part of the strategy on getting MWBEs is a large part is the language, right, on how we draft RFPs, and then the other part is the evaluation portion, because the language is then what's used to create, right, how a company measures against another, right? So if we say a company has to be there for 20 years, right, then that company that hasn't been there in 20 years will score lower in the evaluation process than the company that has been there for 20 years. So I guess what I would love to push for is that when we are drafting language, that we are pulling in. I'm sure that Chief Edelwoo's team is there on the table, but I also would encourage the equity cabinet to be there at the table as well. So that way, the language is kind of reflective of making sure that we're inclusive to everyone, because that could be also a barrier when to MWBEs, because if that is what we are basing our evaluation and metrics off of, then some MWBEs will score lower because of the language that is in that RFP.
Yeah, that's thanks, Counselor, for that. It's something certainly as we built out our procurement analyst team, and Shagun and Andrea have built out their program monitor team and supplier diversity. That's an area where we work closely together because we agree there are opportunities to lower those barriers in terms of the qualifications. Is 10 years of experience truly needed, or could 2 to 3 years suffice? And making sure that we're reviewing that and understanding where that's coming from before it goes out publicly. And then I also wanted to mention, Counselor, that we do have a kind of a diversity and inclusion plan evaluative criteria that we can include in RFPs. And that's really about, adding a scoring criteria that says, are you a vendor who works with and subcontracts with small and local and minority-owned businesses? And so we want to see the inclusion of that criteria in more RFPs as well, because we think that can have an impact. So I think those, and Chief, jump in if I missed anything, but I think there are areas for opportunity there that we're continuing to work on.
Well, I just want to suggest 2 opportunities to partner with your offices on. One is on the language piece, and the other is on more affirmative marketing. So, Councilor Burrell, the buying plan for fiscal 26 is available on the city website. It'd be great if that'll be for the second one. In terms of contracts that might be, or RFPs that might be coming out right now, if there are previous examples that your office may have come across where the language was written in a way that you feel would have boxed out companies and not really created a fair process for evaluation, it'd be very helpful for us to be able to take a look at that to first see if that is still happening, but also can give us some direction on how to avoid that in the future. And then the second recommendation would be that the buying plan is available for for many of the contracts that should be coming out this fiscal year. It would be great if your offices could take a look at here are the 1 or 2 or 3, what could be really major opportunity. I mean, again, Councilor Mejia, to your point about the civilian flagger, I know we're here to talk about what happened previously, but, our team is really laser focused on what are the upcoming opportunities where we can correct past injustices or mistakes and, make sure folks have access to opportunities. So if there's like 2 or 3 of those where we can work together to affirmatively market them to communities that might not be receiving information through the areas or channels that we're doing this already. Again, we can't guarantee that, this still has to go through the process and be fair and equitable, but, ensuring that more people know about them and are bidding is going to help ensure that we're kind of increasing these numbers on the other side.
Thank you. Yeah, and the one example that comes to my mind is the civilian flagger, but it seems like it's already on your radar. The last thing I would like to mention is I heard that he was mentioning breaking down some of these larger contracts. And is that more of like breaking down the service area, or are we thinking about pulling out? And one thing that comes to my mind is the transportation department, where towing could be part of that contract, the transportation. So maybe pulling out different type of services that go inside of having a larger contract, and making that its own separate contract. And there might be other opportunities, even within maybe the dumpster contract, right? Like what else can we pull out? Is it the mechanical services that we are pulling out and making that its own standalone contract?
Yeah.
So just wanted to put the transportation one on your radar for BPS on the towing side.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Councilor Burrell, we're going to have, this is an open hearing order, so we're going to have an opportunity to unpack other, procurement processes. We want to make sure that, because we have some folks who are also joining us for public testimony and panelists around White Stadium, the civilian flaggers program, as well as travel and tourism. I want to be mindful about kind of like making sure that we are laser focused on those. And also wanted to just acknowledge that Colette Phillips has a hard stop at 5. And then at the interest of just kind of making sure there will be a round 2 of questions for the administration. So don't think that I'm giving y'all a pass to go, but I'm taking a little quick intermission to allow Colette, because we haven't talked much about travel and tourism, which is another area of opportunity here for us to really kind of unpack how we hold ourselves accountable, especially when we're looking at Meet Boston and other partners that we have, to make sure that on the city end that we're doing everything in our power to be as inclusive as possible. So I wanted to give, Shane, if you could upgrade our community panel, and we're going to start off with Colette Phillips. And while we do that, Casey, I'm going to put a question on the record that you could think about while we get through this. Is that you previously, I believe, worked as a strategic partnerships with the city, right? Engaging directly with companies, moving into your current role now in procurement. I'm just curious, so many of our residents have talked about that a lot of our contracts already feel predetermined. I would just give you some exact, like White Stadium felt like it was already determined before it even got to the news. The civilian flaggers has also been critiqued as an example of like you already knew who you wanted and everything you're doing is just, transactional, just for checking the box. That's just the word on the street. So I'm just curious, with, and it seems like it's a preferred vendor type of thing already in mind before the RFP is even issued. And that's just kind of the feedback that we've gotten, which is why we are focusing on these particular contracts. But given your background, I'm going to ask, and for you to marinate on when you come back, is how do we ensure that there's a clear separation between relationship building and procurement decisions, especially in communities that have historically been excluded from these processes? I feel like it's all in who you know, and the accessibility part of our committee is really about making sure that everyone has access to opportunity. And I think that sometimes there is this perceived notion that, we hand select and we pick. And I feel like White Stadium and the civilian flaggers, both of those scenarios had a very specific timeline, a process that did feel a bit in question for some folks. So I want you to think about that, because I want to unpack that when we come back for the second round of questions. But I'm going to honor people's time. Shane, if we could have the community panel come on, that would be great. And that's...
Sure. I began moving people over, but it looks like Colette Phillips is declining to become a panelist.
Okay. Colette, if you are hearing this, we'd love for you to accept the invitation. I know you have a hard stop at 5, so we want to bring you in now before, even if you only have 5 minutes, to get your comments on the record. You've been instrumental and a thought partner alongside Chief Idu and myself, and so want to make sure that we get your words of wisdom here. So if we could make sure that you are on. I also want to acknowledge that we have Larry Ellison and Ed Burley, who are already joining us as panelists. So to that extent, I'm going to go with the person who looks least the most uncomfortable, who's in their car, sure, probably sweating to death. I'm going to go first. While we wait for Colette Phillips, we're going to go first with Ed, who's representing the NAACP, and he's going to be talking to us about White Stadium. And then Larry, since you're in your air conditioning, room, we'll go next to you. Okay, so Ed, you now have the floor.
Yeah. My car has air conditioning. It's just a tricky time, so I figured I better stop than get caught in the middle. Ed Burley, I'm here for NAACP. Our president, Royal Smith, couldn't make it, so I'm standing in for him. I'm chair of Legal Redress and co-chair Education Committee. There are a lot of issues related to White Stadium. It's a huge project, a huge issue. And I'm going to be a little more conversational just because of the format and where we are in the day. But I think the term best practice has come up. I think Councilor Mejia used it. I think Chief Idu used it. The procurement officer used it. And I think that's one of the things Councilor Mejia was getting at was, would we hold up the procurement process for the White Stadium contract as a case study model, as a best practice? I think we wouldn't. I think we wouldn't, given what's at stake, the significance of it. I think ideally you'd like to have more than one bid, because what having more than one bid does is it gives the city leverage to advocate for the public interest. So we get a better result, ideally. And I think with the size of this project, the significance of White Stadium, I feel like that's what the public deserved on this count. And so I feel like, Councilor Mejia, is that sort of what one of the things you're getting at a little bit? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And so, how would I say it? So that's sort of a very upstream issue. I think Chief Idu was doing a great job in terms of monitoring how the spending goes out. He's making it very transparent what's coming down the pike. I've even been to Lena Park to one of the events. I mean, he's out there letting people know what's happening, right? I feel like he's doing his part of it. So there's the bigger issue of, we've got a very important, significant project with a ton of moving parts. And right now we're stuck to the one option, which is the way to do it with the soccer team and to work on the parking piece and some of the other pieces. And it's a lot to pull together. I think there's a lot of, feeling out there that having a slimmed down proposal, a public only proposal to compare that to would be beneficial to the city and to getting a good outcome, right? And so I think that's where sort of we're going with that one. I think the reality is, here we are, and the contract has been granted, and there's another public project available, and there's a lot of enthusiasm in having a real comparison. Let me just say that, sort of having a comparison. So in this format, I don't know how deep we can go, but I'd say that as the cost piece of the approved bid escalates, and there seems to be a challenge in getting the traffic piece, which the traffic piece is almost, I think, works as a condition precedent on the contract, where if the traffic piece doesn't work, it's a question whether the bid can go forward as conceived. So there's a real issue about whether that's going to be able to be actualized the way it's conceived. So I think there's that question, and I think what the NAACP and others are interested in doing is, even though the bidding is closed and the city is quite far down the road with the approved plan, is also to keep an alternative alive and give it more scrutiny as a way to compare the benefits, especially as there's so much uncertainty around the cost piece and the traffic pieces that we're not sure if those are going to get resolved in a satisfactory way. So, on the one hand, we understand that there was an interest in landing the soccer team in Boston, and that had something to do with the way the bid was conducted. Let's be honest. Let's be transparent about that. Okay. And for the good part is we got the soccer team, and that's a good thing. I think we're happy to have the National Women's Soccer League team here, and I think that's good. And I think now that they're here, the question is, what's the best way to do this, and what's the best way to handle the Franklin Park piece? Because right now, the way the lease is written, we're not looking at 1 year, 3 years. We're looking at 30-year commitment. That's a 30-year commitment. Most of us will be retired at that point. So it's quite important. It's quite significant to get right. And I think I think the Franklin Park Coalition is doing a lot of hard work in trying to make what they've been given work. And so they've been hard at work trying to get the traffic plan right, try to get other pieces right. But it's a very difficult assignment. It's hard to make the traffic piece work. For everything I understand about it and the studies I've seen, it's a hard thing to get right. So there's some uncertainty sort of lingering over the project and what's best for residents in Boston, for Bostonians. And now that we've landed the franchise, it's awarded, it's a done deal. I think there's an opportunity to take a look and make sure we're doing the right thing around how we develop Franklin Park. I could say a lot, but I just want to put that out there for now in the context of this discussion, and sort of leave it there for now.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Ed. And before I move on to Larry, I will read, before we end with the community panel, I'll read Colette Phillips into the record, so that I'll end with that. But I do want to just pause before we move on. Either Chief or Casey, you might be able to provide some insight around this particular tension point that has been identified by a number of different groups here. Is that if there is a desire to look at a different proposal that is fully public, that it sounds to be overwhelmingly endorsed and favored by community, and it costs a fraction of what we're going to be spending, I'm curious about where the resistance lies in terms of really honoring that as a process, especially since, and I do appreciate being my translator. Usually I'm the translator in the chamber, but I appreciate you helping articulate what I was trying to get at earlier. But that, to me, and this is just my own little humble opinion, if it costs less to build something that is 100% public, and it doesn't have so much opposition, why not reflect on the decisions that we've made and reevaluate what makes the most sense for the moment right now? I just feel like, where's the resistance? Why not pause?
So, Councillor Ed, first of all, I appreciate the comments that have been made, but I just want to make, for my personal clarity, is the suggestion that's being made that an RFP that has been rewarded, essentially should be rescinded, and that there should be another, especially one where work has already been done, that we should then rebid it for the conversation that you're, because I don't know, I'm trying to understand how you can make that work. Well, because no. Well, I can tell you. I'm gonna tell you this.
I'm gonna help. Mm-hmm. So we, during the budget process, had earmarked, I think it was $50 million for Oval White Stadium renovation, And then there was another earmark that was put into the budget for this particular cycle. So it was like an IOU. It was money that had been set aside that we haven't even approved yet, that the city was counting on for White Stadium. And so there is a discrepancy here around just that piece alone, right? You had approved a project that didn't have the full funding because you had it in year one, last fiscal budget cycle, and then there was another 50 million or so that was put in this capital year's budget that hadn't been approved yet. So there already is a discrepancy there in terms of that process, right? You all started working on something that hadn't been fully approved by the city council yet. So there already is a discrepancy with that. And so I want to name that. And yes, I understand that it might sound crazy to pause, but it's not like you've demolished the entire place and you haven't gone full steam ahead, right? There's still an opportunity for us to repair the harm and think about, now that we have a counter proposal, which we had a counter proposal, prior to you all even moving forward with the demolition. When we had the hearing, I don't think the demolition had started. I think you guys started an MLK birthday. I can't remember, or there was some messed up day that y'all did something that everybody was like, and on MLK Day they did this. So I'm just, I am curious as to why not, and especially because of all the community pushback that you've received, and because there's a counter proposal that is more cost effective. Those would be good reasons for us to say, you know what? You haven't created the beer garden yet, right? You haven't done the full renovation. Yeah, why not? Why not take a pause? Yeah, I am asking the question.
Well, yeah, and again, I'm not meaning to suggest any opinion on it. It's for my own clarity to understand what is being asked, and Ed, from your comments as well, is the and it sounds like.
Yes,
and again,
it is.
Because a pause for me is different from the city has awarded a contract.
How much? How much money have we already awarded? How much money has already been out? And we can reserve the right to reevaluate decisions and contracts and people who we want to do business with, right? There have been scenarios in which we've contracted folks in the city that have not been good actors or whatever, and we haven't fulfilled the contract. We've stopped it, and we've found, I've seen those things happen. So I'm just curious, given the fact that there is a counter proposal with good justification that it maintains its public identity, and that, we still have time, why not? Why can't it be done?
And again, I'm not meaning to, I don't have an opinion on that. I'm just asking for clarity purpose if that's what's being suggested. That's all I'm to better answer that. And then to one of your questions, what's been spent, I think on a previous slide, we showed $7.5 million roughly has been spent on this project, with close to $4 million of that going to women and minority businesses. And I will also clarify that, at least for our purposes, the role that my team has been playing is on whatever's being built, is making sure that women and minority businesses get access to that. I don't have an answer on the question of why. I've not been part of a discussion kind of talking about that recommendation. I'm happy to, if it hasn't been, suggested, I'm happy to talk about that internally, but I wouldn't be able to answer the question as to why I've not been.
Well, I feel like, I don't know who and if IGR is listening in, but I like to know, the next time we have this hearing, I'd like to know who the decision maker is around that particular question, because I do believe we have an opportunity to repair harm. And I've been incredibly vocal about, I do believe that White Stadium needs to be renovated, and I do believe that Black and brown people deserve the best of the best, right? So I am in full agreement of the renovation. What I am uncomfortable with is the process that we've gone about getting here, and how we are spending more than what we need to at a time when we're already financially struggling. And so, to Ed's point, there already is a proposal that has been enthusiastically embraced by community. And if we've only spent $7 million out of the $130 million or whatever it is, we do have an opportunity to reevaluate and reconsider what this renovation cost is going to be within the best interest of the fiscally responsible thing to do in this moment. And so, Chief, if it's not you, IGR needs to let me know who is the one that could make that decision, because that's the person or the department that can help us, put an end to this conversation as to whether or not we can actually do things differently here. And Ed, is that kind of like, now I'm your translator? Or you're on mute. Ed is like, I didn't want to be this aggressive, but that's not what all I was saying. But
I said we can translate for each other, the three of us. We can work it out. And I think where we're at, specifically because there are challenges in executing the vision for the accepted bid, if there were no traffic issues, if that was a done deal, then we might be willing to go along with it more easily, because we know that that could be accommodated. But given that the traffic piece, no one has been able to solve yet, and the cost piece is a rising number, then I think those things do point to saying we should have a slimmed down version that we know we can do, and to be able to compare the two and make sure and decide which one is in the best interests at this point in time going forward. And it also, I believe, gives the city more leverage in the negotiation. So we're not blind to the idea that contracts have been signed, things are happening. No one's saying that, but there is a pause now. The team is going to play in Gillette. So there's the next 5 months of this year to revisit it and compare and see what the best path forward is, even as the preparations are being made for the renovation, which I think there's a consensus about the renovation happening, and the conflict is over exactly how it does happen. And so, yeah, given the factors I raised, I think there is a rationale for taking a look and comparing a slimmed down version versus the approved version. I do.
So Casey, since you're the procurement director, I don't know, I don't want to put this question on you, but what happens when we enter into a contract and we've had issues with the contract, the awardee, or there's been some reflection or some revisiting that needs to be had? Like, how do we rectify that situation? Or is it like you get what you get and you don't get upset and you just keep plowing through it? Or there's no way out of it? Is that what there's no way out of it? This is it? We just got to go with it and that's it?
So speaking at a kind of a high level for contracts, any contract that we enter into at the city, of course, we have the ability to amend that contract and change it. So we can change the scope of work. As allowed under procurement law, we can adjust for, price or the cost and the end date of things. So those are always opportunities that the city has the power to do. There are, of course, cases where we can terminate a contract as well. The city has the right to do that. There are always costs to terminating a contract. And so that's something, the broader team takes into consideration. The example I'm thinking of off the top of my head was a vendor who helped us, who won a bid to build a fireboat for the Boston Harbor to do water rescue in the case of someone falling in the harbor. And the vendor went out of business. Like they would not be able to build a boat for us anymore. And so, there's time lost and all of those things. But of course, we canceled the contract. We went out to bid again to make sure that the fire department could get a water rescue boat that would support those efforts in Boston Harbor. So there are certainly opportunities for the city. I can't speak to the White Stadium contract specifically, but at a high level, the city does have options in its contract.
Yeah, so thank you for your honesty and your transparency regarding that, because I think that we are in a situation right now that, the supplier and diversity piece that Chief Idowu is leading could still happen, very much so, right? Like, we can still create as many opportunities for BIPOC and women-owned contractors to support the renovation. We could still do all of those things and renovate White Stadium at a lower cost. And so and especially since we noted that we're in a very fiscally vulnerable place right now, even just for that could give us a reason to want to pause and reevaluate the decision, right? Even if it's just that alone, right? So I think that, I don't know, I feel like we have to really start thinking about the decisions that we make, because I feel like we are going to be ultimately responsible for this at the end of the day, regardless of what happens. And as a city councilor who serves the entire city of Boston, this is the conversation that I go when I'm door knocking, when I'm out in these streets, in community and civic associations, that everybody's worried about how we're spending our tax dollars. And so this would be an opportunity for course correct. And I think it'll be a win for the administration to say, we see you, we hear you, we affirm you, and we believe that community voice matters. And we also know that our dollars matter in this moment in time. And because of that, we're reconsidering the process for White Stadium. And we haven't heard that. And I appreciate Chief Idowu asking for clarification. It's like, that's what you want? Yes. So yes, that's what we want. We want that to happen. At least I want that to happen. And I can't speak for my entire council colleagues because, I'm just one out of 13. But I believe that in the best interest of what we're trying to do, especially about repairing relationships and harm, and from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, given what the NAACP has already stated and has been advocating alongside others, that we should definitely reconsider. And now that I know that we can, I think that we should do everything in our power to do just that. That's just my humble opinion. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but I will keep on trying. And so, Larry, I know you've been patiently waiting. Ed, don't go yet. We're not done yet, but just in case. Larry, this is also going to be another contract, Casey, that I want you to reconsider, just so you know. But go ahead, Larry. You now have the floor. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you for chairing this meeting, and thank you for calling this hearing. I'm going to, it seems like this is a pattern where we see these contracts awarded, right? And then we say, we're going to do better next time. And here we are next time, and we're not doing any better, right? This, as it relates to these flagmen, I think one of the things that really hasn't got as much attention, in my opinion, is the conflict of interest awarding this contract to former Police Commissioner Ed Davis. Ed Davis was part of the selection committee that found current Commissioner Michael Cox. So now you're negotiating with someone who played a part in you getting the job. But also the deputy superintendent at the time, who negotiated the patrolman's contract, was working left and went to work for Ed Davis. But also what was striking in that contract was that in the selection of people who would be eligible for the details other than law enforcement, the only civilian that was written into the patrolman's contract, which I've never seen in my time as a police officer, was Ed Davis's company. So those right there should, exclude him from a conflict of interest, because then it was taken out when people noticed it, because this was glaring to those of us who are saying, wait a minute, how is this a fair process? So now we get down to where he is the one that is awarded a contract where we all kind of knew the fix was in to begin with. So I'm not sure who at the city level didn't see the conflict of interest here, all with his relationship with selecting the police commissioner, the person negotiating the contract was working for him shortly after he left the police department, and then him being awarded this contract. And the other thing is that when you look at this, the order on which people can receive this, there were several other law enforcement agencies other than BPD officers that could do the details. Then why is it only one civilian company can do the job if other law enforcement agencies can also have access to these details? And Ed Davis is the only civilian who was written into a contract, is awarded this contract. And also, did anyone know Ed Davis's history when it comes to people of color? As a matter of fact, our organization, the NAACP, and at the time the Patrolmen's Association, took a vote of no confidence of Ed Davis for his lack of diversity, his lack of promotions for people of color when they had the opportunity, and he had a reverse course. When he had an opportunity to promote black officers to sergeant, he promoted all white. So his company is not a diverse company. So I'm not understanding, other than personal relationships, that Ed Davis was awarded this contract without, First Armor, which is owned by a black female who submitted this. And in his contract, he says he's going to need 300 to 600 people. The detail system now is being handled by probably less than 50 people from the BPD, from the Boston Police Department. If anything, the city could have kept this. If they're talking about financial responsibility, they could have hired the civilians to manage this, and the city would have been awarded the financial benefits of the percentages of the contract, of the details that are awarded currently. So I don't know if you guys have any answers to, first of all, to me, which is glaring, is the conflict of interest.
Larry, I appreciate your comments. I was not a party to the CBA process. So I really can't speak to the process. All I know about is the kind of the final CBA, right, which did outline some kind of requirements for the third-party person, experience working with law enforcement, the ability to hire them as employees versus contractors. So be happy to get more information back to you on that, but I don't have more information on the CBA process.
Right, but I still haven't heard you address the conflict of interest. Is that not a conflict of interest, that someone who has an interest in it, who was part of the selection process for the person who was awarding them the contract, the person who wrote the contract for BPD is now an employee of that person, that no one sees the conflict there?
Yeah. Yeah, I would really quick, and I know that folks are, normally questions come through the chair to the administration, and I'm a non-traditional chair in the sense of how I do business, because I do believe that the best communication happens when people can speak back and forth, but there is a protocol and how it goes about doing that. So Casey, I want to be mindful that you probably did not come prepared to answer questions from community panelists, but it is a question that I have listed on my questions anyways when it's time for us to do our last round. And so if you could please address the conflict of interest, and I have the conflict of interest both for the civilian flaggers and also potential conflict of interest for White Stadium.
So I'd have to, I know we do have a standard for conflict of interest in contracts and for former employees. I'd have to brush up on the specific terms of that conflict of interest law and make sure I'm speaking to the exact right details of it. So I hear you that you think you've identified a potential conflict of interest. I'm not a lawyer by training, so I don't want to misspeak on the conflict of interest law, but I am happy to get back to you and the counselor as well on that question.
I add, first of all, Larry, always a pleasure to see you. And I don't have specific answers to the questions you've asked, but what you have identified does spark an idea in me in terms of future focused effort. I mean, I know you made the comment that, this is what we hear. And in terms of, what you've done, I mean, before any of my roles, your leadership at Mamleo, you were asking these questions then. So I definitely get the frustration on these types of contracts. I said in my comments earlier at the outset about, on the over 50,000, that there are committees that make these decisions. And I think, what's an idea that I think can come out of this is talking with my colleagues internally about the diversification of these committees, because often a department puts out an RFP and the department makes that decision, like people in that department. It's not often that there are people from other departments that are part of these committees to help in reviewing applications and helping to make the decisions. And so I think, one of the things that we can talk about internally, at least future focus, and I get that this is a post-audit hearing, and so we're kind of looking backwards at what was the breakdown and all that. But I know that one of the outcomes of doing that is thinking about how do we correct things in the future to avoid the perception or the frustration that brought us here in the first place. And I would wonder through you, Chair Mejia, if at least on that specific notion and the questions that Larry asked about, whether it be the conflicts or the points brought up about how come these things weren't considered in the selection, I think might be an appropriate way of addressing this in the future if there are other departments who were impacted by this anyway. I mean, my team, others who were impacted in different ways by this particular contract, if it makes sense that that's something that we could talk about and that might be satisfactory.
So really quick, Larry, before you say something, I'm just going to chime in real quick here that yes, this is after things have happened, this is an opportunity for us to course correct and think. However, we also have an opportunity, if there has been any harm caused, how do we repair that harm? And I think that that's kind of where what my hope is that during these processes, we can think about kind of like the missteps that we've taken and hold ourselves accountable to if there have been any, and that if we can point to those missteps as an opportunity for us to course correct, then that's also what I'm trying to do, Chief, just so you know, like in full transparency, like, yes, learning what we could do differently moving forward, and also how has what we've already done is questionable, if you will, and what opportunities can we lean on now to fix those things and maybe a do-over. Like a do-over, maybe. I don't know. Okay, Larry, continue.
No, I was gonna say, because I mean, the Flagger program has not been implemented yet, so I'm not sure why that could not be tweaked. Where, like I said earlier, you have several law enforcement agencies that these details are available to them. It's not just BPD if they can't fill them. That why is it only one company, and it's Ed Davis, and he seems to get all the contracts across not just the city but the state? There's only one person that is qualified to handle these things. I mean, how does one build an infrastructure if they're never given an opportunity to build up to the capacity where they can compete for these larger contracts? And you're right, and I appreciate you acknowledging that. Yeah, there is a level of frustration because we keep hearing, well, we're going to get to you, keep waiting in line. We're tired of waiting in line, and this is an opportunity where it hasn't been implemented yet. It could be adjusted to allow others access to this lucrative city contract.
Okay.
We can take that back.
Yeah, we could take, great. And thank you, Larry. Are you done with your testimony piece? Okay, great. And Casey, I know that in your previous role, with strategic partnerships, I also think relationship building is key, right? And especially as we continue to have these conversations. And so I'm going to ask the same question again. To Larry's point, if it hasn't been fully implemented yet, when Chief Idu says take it back for consideration, what does that look like? Because I think that people are at a place where they really want to understand language and manage all of our expectations. Because when I hear take it back for consideration, I think, wow, there's a possibility. And I don't want us to set ourselves up for failure. I really want us to walk out of here with a real clear understanding of what is possible so that we can work towards helping you all get there.
So at least on my side, in terms of what I shared, so there were several questions and I took from them suggestions that were shared. So, there's the conflict of interest piece, as Casey mentioned, neither of us are trained lawyers, although people think I'm one. And so if they want to pay for the degree, I will take the money for that degree. So happy to take that question back because we simply just don't know. And don't want to share our opinions as if they're facts. On the question about, and then, how Larry ended in terms of, the contract hasn't started, so is there an opportunity? I don't know the answer to that question of, Casey, mentioned earlier about amending contracts. Very often on large contracts, there are subcontractors. Like, I don't know the dynamics of this contract. I don't know what it looks like. So what I'm offering to do is to take these questions back to BPD to better understand, what are the opportunities that are available? Now, granted, if it's none, that will be disappointing, I know, to the folks on the call, but I think the conversation is important because now, I'm here, so now we're in it, right? And so I don't know the length of this contract, so if the answer is there's nothing that can be done, well, now I want to know when the contract is coming up again so that we're preparing in the future to make sure that we're avoiding what happened with this one. But before that, it's what is the opportunity based on what was shared here, and I can commit to bringing that response back to you all, and then we'll go from there. But on this, it's simply that I really don't have enough information to answer you all in a satisfactory way. And I think hopefully my reputation here is that I try to come to these hearings with accurate and satisfactory answers for you all.
And I'll just say personally, right, I can tell you a lot about the procurement process. I'm not as involved once implementation starts. And so to Shagun's point, we need to go back to BPD and have conversations with them. Once the procurement process ends, the kind of lead department really takes over when it comes to implementation. So I haven't been as close to that, and I really don't want to misspeak as to the work that's happening right now.
Thank you for that. And I know I hope we still have people signed up for public testimony. I want to be mindful of how patient they've been. Normally I start with people and then go to the administration, but we've done things a little different here just because we wanted to make sure that we've created space for, I hope, feels productive dialogue. And I think that, we are in the political climate in particular, it's very toxic, right? And I really want the administration to walk out of here with a sense of, wow, this is some really good things came to be. There's some things that we could do differently moving forward. Here's some considerations that we're going to take to course correct, if any. And I really do want you both to know that that is the spirit in which we are here. And because our job is, I'll speak, my job is to advocate and fight for the people that I serve. And, Shagun, you knew me before I was inside this chamber, and I was a fighter then. And, I've been fighting my entire life, and that's what I know how to do best. And so while people might think or might be afraid or scared of all of this energy, just know that it's just me trying to channel and push as much as I can, because I'm carrying the voices of so many people who I've come across who are frustrated with White Stadium, who are frustrated with civilian flaggers, who have raised some issues around travel and tourism and who gets it. And, there's this dynamic about it's all in who you know. And sometimes it's who benefits. And there's just been a lot of discrepancies, or at least things that have been flagged that are questionable about these two particular issues that I would really want to get it right. And I think the people that we serve deserve that level of advocacy on their behalf. And I hope that that that's where it's coming from. It's coming from a place of just really trying to fix it. And I have a can-do attitude. I believe everything and anything is possible. I don't believe that everything's a done deal. I do believe that there's a moment of repair and of reflection, and I think that the people we owe that to them. If we can, we should do everything in our power. And I know that sometimes we have to go back and change things up, but we want change, and this is what it looks like. is to make those difficult decisions. So I just really want to underscore the intentionality about our time together, because I want you all to be set up for success. And these conversations also help us understand what hearing orders we need to think of, what ordinances that we need to partner with you on, what budget priorities we need to reconsider as we're thinking about FY 27, 26, right? Like, these are the sort of conversations that help inform us what we need to be fighting for, so that you all can meet the moment and we're not just like, you should do this, but then we don't give you the resources to do it. So I just want you to know, like, this is also part of like taking those notes and giving you the tools that you need to get it right.
Do you mind if I reply, Counselor? Because I agree with everything you said. So first, I just want to note, so Casey and I both have the 5:30 stop, but to your point, we're going to transition to our phones so that we're still listening in. So just want to apologize to folks if we go off camera and switch out that way. Second is, I also want to acknowledge, at least for yourself, Counselor, very often at these hearings, the ones that I'm in, I will always put the opportunity out there to partner with our office to kind of follow up and follow through on what's talked about here, and have to give credit to you, because after our last small business one, I made that offer. You had Alicia and other members come to some events that you were hosting, and so we would want more of that with yourself and with your colleagues. And then finally, again, agree with everything that you've said. We certainly receive it in the spirit that it is intended, and with our community partners who are here, and then with the public testimony later. I'll just say two quick things. Of course, it is sometimes uncomfortable. That's not a bad thing. We always want to have the answers and the right answers, and we never want to be talking about something we got wrong, because we always want to get it right. But these are opportunities, as you said, to learn, course correct, and we do always strive to be better. And I will say, on this particular issue, what I've been grateful for is that we have never come back to these hearings to talk about how we dropped the ball on something we talked about the last time. It's always about a new thing that we need to focus on and fix in the future. So, I appreciate that. I agree with you that the perception is that for a long time is when you have to know someone. And what I will say is, one reason I always want to partner with all of you is because, and I was just talking about this with someone the other day, and this might sound strange, but I think it should be about the fact that you know someone, and everyone should know who we are, right? We want everyone to get all the information and to get the resources and to be prepared to, everybody should have a connection in City Hall. All 681,000 residents should know somebody in City Hall or in city government and have access to the same opportunity and resources that others have. And so that's what we have been striving to do, especially, I'm glad that Casey's here. In previous administrations, this was not what was happening, because it was either supply diversity or procurement. There wasn't a lot of synergy or partnership, and now there's deep collaboration. So anyway, just to say, we appreciate this opportunity. We will never shy away from coming and talking about the issues that matter to you and to community, because we are residents and community members as well, and they matter to us as well, that we get it right. So again, sorry for the soliloquy, but we just to say that we appreciate you, and we're always happy for these opportunities.
So you can't be dropping big words that I never heard of. And what's that? And my audience wants to know too. Soliloquy. I can't even say it. What was the soliloquy?
Soliloquy, often used in theater. It's when the main character delivers, or not the main character, but when a character delivers a very long. They're the only one in the scene, essentially.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is what I love my job. I'm always learning new words. Thank you. I'm gonna have to Google it. Google that one, do the same, and send it to me with the phonics so I can say it right. All right. So, Casey, you want to say something?
I just wanted to build on what Shagun spoke about, and also a little bit answer the question you asked me earlier, Counselor, before I have to transition to my phone. And I can of course still try and jump in, but it'll be a little bit harder for me. You asked a little bit about the building relationships and bringing in new access. And one thing we haven't talked about today that I think is really important is that we have, across procurement and supplier diversity, implemented for every contract that a department needs to go search the certified directory and see who can do this work before they issue the contract. And it creates this open kind of place for us to say, are you inviting new people to this bid and opportunity and bring new certified businesses to the table? And as Stacy's team builds and adds more and more certified businesses, that impact grows because we're inviting more certified businesses. So we want to continue pushing that. And I think we have, one of the reasons Scott is so important to this in city auditing is he won't approve the contract unless that's done. And so that is a really important compliance step that helps us and make sure that we're inviting new people. The other thing I wanted to say and point out, particularly for businesses who might be listening today, is through the dashboard we spoke about earlier, you can also see every city contract that was awarded and how much it was. So let's say you're interested in the janitorial contract at BCYF or whatever it may be. You can go see exactly what the person who won that contract before bid and use that information for you to put together the strongest bid you can. And I think that's really important, Counselor. It's a piece of in the past that oftentimes people said, well, I don't know the person who got this before, how much money did they get? And now that's available to everybody. And so we really want to drive people to look at that and understand so that they too can have better success with the city. So I just wanted to mention those two things because you had asked the question earlier and Shagun made such great points on it. But again, excited to hear the public testimony. I'll be on my phone. Shane, let me back in when I log off. But thank you again for having us here today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And I do appreciate you all staying a little bit longer and your grace for allowing me to do things differently and for taking the time to answer both Ed and Larry when they addressed you directly. I think that we need more of that. And it shouldn't just be in a public hearing forum. I think that we should create as many opportunities for people to be able to dialogue and exchange. And Ed and Larry, similarly, I want to give you both an opportunity to have any closing remarks. And then we're going to transition over to our public testimony that have been so incredibly patient. So I'll start with Ed and then I'll go to Larry.
Oh, let me defer to Larry.
Okay, Larry, you go first.
No, Council, thank you for calling this important hearing, and thank the folks from City Hall, Sagun and his partner there for listening and understanding. Council, I remember attending quite a few of these hearings across the city with you, some of your current and former councilors about flagmen. And I don't think that this is what they were trying to come to, was to have one person who, in my opinion, get this position, in this lucrative position, and the people in the community not having a say or representation. So I think there is an opportunity for us to reevaluate this. It hasn't gone out yet, that we can include other people. It's a big enough piece of the pie where others who have always been disenfranchised. I mean, this is why I guess for me it's a little frustrating, because the big hearings was, how was the community, and particularly communities of color, going to benefit from this? And it's awarded to someone who I have the least confidence that diversity. If you look at his website, it's not diverse, and I don't think that the people implementing this is going to be any diverse. So I'm open and hoping that there'll be some reconsideration, or at least including others as part of this process. Thank you again for your time. Appreciate you.
Yeah, and also, just so for the record, that we did fight for the civilian flaggers initiative, and you're absolutely right. It had a different vision, and we did not meet the moment in the direction that we moved in. And so the way he was awarded, I understand that Casey broke it down in terms of the awarding point system, if you will, but I think that there was a far more factors and considerations that we did not take into account. That's why I think calling for reconsideration is definitely the appropriate next best step for us to get it right. So thank you for pointing that out. Okay, Ed, you now have the floor.
I mean, I'll be brief. I think this is a good beginning to a fuller conversation that we need to have, and that would be in the best interest of more Bostonians around White Stadium. Just from an NAACP perspective, we've always seen sports and education as a way to break barriers in American society. And so, we value the renovation of White Stadium, but we also don't want it to come at the expense of, basic education in the classroom and other basic needs that are very important, especially now in the city. So we sort of take a proportional approach to what we do with the stadium. And no one loves sports more than me, but it's easy to get enamored of sports and to forget about your other priorities. And I don't want to see that happen with the way we approach White Stadium. And like you mentioned, Councilor Mejia, I do think with the team playing in Gillette, we do have a moment to revisit and do what's smart, and it's going to be in the best interest, long term.
Right. Thank you. And I'm so excited that the NAACP has joined us here today, a well-respected and regarded institution. And so I think from a civil rights standpoint too, so many of the residents that live in the surrounding abutting area, Black and brown folks are, concerned about gentrification, property taxes going. There's so many things here in regards to White Stadium that deserves us to do our due diligence and making sure that we don't cause any unintended harm to communities who are already struggling. So thank you for your leadership. Larry, thank you for always standing up and raising your hand and asking the tough questions. Thank you to the administration. I'm going to go transition over to public testimony, but I want to thank you both. And I'm going to end the hearing with reading Councilor, I almost put Councilor Colette Phillips as a city councilor. I know she don't want that job. I'm going to make sure that I read Colette Phillips' testimony into the record as well, just because she was a thought leader in this process. So you all can stay if you want, or you can transition out, but we're gonna now, Shane, we can, and Ethan, we could begin with public testimony. I believe we still have some folks lined up.
Great, Madam Chair. We have Sarah Freeman, but she's declining to become a panelist. And then we have Kaliga joining us.
Yeah. Okay, great. So Kaliga, remember you're a pro at this. You have 2 minutes to introduce yourself. And I'm going to turn on my, and I also want to acknowledge that the Urban League has also joined. And the Urban League is here as well. So I wanted to uplift them and their advocacy in this space. So I wanted to acknowledge them as well. I believe Aisha Miller from the Urban League is here to speak. So we'll make sure that you could speak once you have your hand up. I believe that it's also up. So Ethan or Shane, if you can also have Aisha Miller on deck. Thank you. Oh, they're just here. They're not speaking. Okay, go ahead, Kaliga. You have 5
All right. Well, yeah, I got it. So first of all, I'm going to address White Stadium, which you know is a subject I'm familiar with, for one thing. So first of all, if they are calling having a woman, billionaire woman-owned soccer team as having a woman-owned business, no. I don't think regular women who are struggling to pay bills and to raise their children, that is the type of women-owned businesses that we need to support. That is not a diversity goal to have. They don't count. That's number one. Number two, White Stadium is a hot button issue during this election, and with good reason, but maybe it should never have happened. There was one RFP, and it was a behind closed doors deal. And if we are talking about spending our hard-earned tax dollars, and that's what we're talking about here, and we're talking about having equity in Boston, then this should not have even happened in the first place. Supposedly we have some things in place to make sure that things are done properly, but they're not working. So I'm going to say something. Whether I agree with you or not, I have had some, in the past year, I have had some meetings or met with all 13 city councilors, even for something or other. I know all of them, and I respect the office of city council. You all work hard. It's not an easy job. However, and this is what I'm going to say, White Stadium should have never happened with one RFP and a behind closed door deal with our tax dollars. I wonder if electeds think that we taxpayers, we constituents are not bright enough or intelligent enough to make our own decisions. Because if there was going to be true community engagement, then what they would have done is not had, I went to so many meetings and there was no community engagement. And community engagement would have been, hey, we have this idea to bring in a professional sports team into Franklin Park to fix White Stadium. What do you as the community think of it? That would never happen. That's called community engagement. Before every meeting, it was already a done deal. So I'm going to say this. There was an opportunity, and only 3 city councilors voted for it, to put on the ballot having an independent IG, Inspector General, to oversee things. And guess what? I bet you White Stadium wouldn't have happened if we had an IG, because there was only one RFP and because it was a behind closed door deal. So that would have stopped it right in its tracks, maybe. It would have been done better. We all want White Stadium fixed. Yes, there is a couple of proposals that would fix White Stadium. All they did was demolish it. They haven't built it yet.
Kaliga, I just want you to know that I gave you a little extra time.
I'm almost done. I'm almost done.
Almost. No, you got.
No, just give me a moment, because I want to say 3 city councilors out of 13 voted to have that on the ballot for us to decide as voters. You did, Julia, Worrell did, and Erin Murphy did. And I'm closing with this. This is an election year. And if all of you care about transparency, why didn't you vote for it? That's it.
Thank you, Kaliga. All right. In case y'all are wondering what that is about, our office has been leading an initiative around establishing an Office of Inspector General. There was a desire to get a citizen's petition, a non-binding one, on the ballot to allow folks to, weigh in on it. And it was really seen as an organizing tactic and a strategy to be able to apply some pressure so that it doesn't die at the State House. But there was no desire to move forward with such a thing. So that's what Kaliga is referring to. But we are still standing. We're still going to keep on keeping on. All right, who's next?
We have Sarah Freeman.
Okay, Sarah, and then I believe Christian. Okay, so Sarah, you do have 2 minutes, y'all. 2 minutes, Sarah.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm driving, so I apologize if sound quality is not good. Thank you for bringing this up, and I will try not to repeat what's already been said, but I really, really, really appreciate the NAACP comments and what Councilor Mejia has said. Very troubled, but I don't know if I've ever seen a project that has so many people feeling sad. I'll give you one anecdote and then I'll close with an anecdote. What I want to use my 2 minutes for is I think no one wants to stand in the way of the benefits that this deal could bring, or the idea of women's sports. The idea is the location and transformation of a neighborhood in a way that the neighbors didn't want or ask for. And the cost, there's the philosophical park impact, neighborhood impact, and then there's the cost. And when Andrew Zimbalist at a previous hearing said that just the debt service is going to be, I forget, 10 million a year for 10 years or something like that, I thought to myself, if the city is willing to spend 10 million a year why don't they spend it on getting the best maintenance, the best custodians, the community benefits, the park investment, and they could still have millions left over. It doesn't make sense financially, and it leaves people feeling like the city doesn't want to do the work, the maintenance that they want. They love the idea that this pro team will come in and do the maintenance, and it leaves people feeling bad. The anecdote is I went to FedEx, Xeroxing a map, an oversized map, and the clerk, when I was checking out, said, "Oh, I used to live near there." And I asked her if she was following the planning process, and she said, "Yeah, it feels like they're taking something away." And I know it's a mixed bag and you can argue both sides, but that might be my 2 minutes. So thank you for bringing this up. I hope you will take comments, because I think there are people who either couldn't be here or couldn't stay that might have relevant info. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I think one of the hardest things to do in chairing these hearings is the public testimony. Technically, there's only supposed to be 2 minutes. I struggle with that because I know how important it is to hear people. And so that's why my hearings always go over. So I'm going to do a better job at trying to stay on time, but I hear you, I see you. And so if I open up start showing you stuff, please just be mindful that there are other people who are also waiting. And I just want to, it's not that I don't want to be respectful. It's just, we just have to keep it moving. All right. So Christian, I believe you're up and you do have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Hello, everyone. I just want to say thank you for this conversation. It was awesome listening and just hearing how hard you guys are really working and the efforts that everyone's making to come to this conversation. I think I just kind of want to echo around the issues with the White Stadium from a cultural standpoint view of somebody. I just want to say I am also an artist. I'm somebody from the community who, even as I'm 31 years old, so when I was younger, I'm also a BIPOC transgender member of the community. I was born a female. We were talking about women's sports, and we're talking about, a private corporate organization coming into a space that is cultured. And I'm echoing these two women specifically because they're reflecting a community need of sustainability on culture. And they're echoing a sadness of something that generationally has been passed down that they want to uphold. I also want to support the fact that the White Stadium needs renovation, but I want to also talk about the flaggers and the BDP agency and speak to what Larry was talking about. As far as Ed Davis's company, I looked up his website immediately, and I don't see any diversity either. I am an individual in this community who has firsthand experienced violence from people who are supposed to be specialized in risk management, specialized in safety, public safety, but they're not actually educated on how to interact with LGBTQI community. And I'm here to speak today because if you're going to put an infrastructure into a community, it needs to have exactly what Scott was asking about. I believe it was Scott. A data and demographic that actually supports these decisions. So I want to come back to Casey, and this is not attacking anyone. This is all from a loving place. These qualitative factors that you went over in your proposals and how you were, the processes or whoever the department looked at, they need to be considering identity. And Julia has been speaking up for community, and her voice is very important to us. So I just want to leave with that, is that it's not just about Black and brown individuals and minority individuals. There's people of disabilities, there's veterans, there's people of all types of intersectionality out here who, even in my own service, in my own work, are voicing these issues. So I think it's a good idea for everyone to pause and come back to the conversation. Because if you want people in the city of Boston to be happy with decisions that you're making and know that you're making decisions, it needs to reflect the culture.
Okay, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you did go over, but I didn't want to interrupt your flow because you were going, I'm going to get fired. I keep letting everybody go over. But I think it's important to allow people to be fully expressed. So thank you so much for bringing your entire perspective into the space. We all needed to hear it. All right. So who is next on deck? I see a Coors.
So I know we have Ricardo up next,
Okay.
but I do want to just say we have somebody in the waiting room. It's Corez with your hand up. I don't have you on my list. I don't know if you can change your name to a first and last name. I might have you on here, but I just wanted to put that out there before we move forward. But yes, I believe Ricardo is next.
Okay. And then is Aisha after Ricardo's Aisha, right? Okay. All right. Ricardo. You do have 2 minutes, okay?
All right, I'm not gonna try to go over. Let me see if I can stay within 2 minutes. But first and foremost, just thank everyone that's on this meeting. I just kind of want to talk a little bit about White Stadium and talk about the impact it has. I'm the owner of Privé Parking. We are a Roxbury-based parking solution transportation management company right here in Boston. You guys might have heard about my company. It was the first time that a local Black small business was awarded the transportation contract for the NAACP National Convention that took place in 2023. So I am that guy. It was my company who ran the entire transportation operation. But typically what happens is, we get these opportunities, but after these opportunities, everyone's always asking what's next, right? And that's what we've been looking for. We were able to move 10,000 people for a whole week throughout Seaport, and we were looking for our opportunity to really have some type of longevity working with the city or working with organizations like the city and the convention center. So when White Stadium happened, Shagan and his team, they brought in a very strong effort to really make those introductions. I believe there is real purpose and real results that happens when you do attend these particular sessions, right? And I'm a perfect example. We were awarded the transportation operation contract for White Stadium. Right now, we are also the transportation consultant that they brought in. So the transportation operation plan that was before me, guys. I am here to make sure that there's real community impact. I live in Roxbury. I know what some of the real issues are. I know how it is down there over by Franklin Park. And, they are taking the right steps, right? And I just want to make sure that I'm able to just testify and say things are happening. Yes, it feels like these things are impossible. I know Larry mentioned an opportunity about, it's always these same guys that are always having the opportunities to win these contracts. And I just want to make sure that everyone see and I can just display that things are changing. When it comes to the transportation piece, there's companies like me and other companies that we're looking at opportunities, we're being strategic, and we're really putting ourselves in a position to win. And we are doing that, and this is living proof. So I know there's a lot of comments, and we can look at the downside and some of the things that the city needs to improve. Absolutely, we can all agree to that. But we also need to spotlight the positive things that are happening with our Black and brown businesses in the community, and we are moving forward. And it's not just about me. It doesn't begin with me and doesn't end with me. It's about everyone else that's looking for opportunities. And this is a perfect opportunity for us to come together as Black and brown business owners to identify opportunities for each other and work off of each other and help each other and guide each other on how to put ourselves in a position to win. And that's all I want to say.
Yeah, no, that's a lot. That was a lot. That's not all. That was great. Thank you, Ricardo. And I think it's really important for the city. And we didn't get to talk much about travel and tourism and sports and all of that. I think there are lots of opportunities that are coming down the pipeline for the city with the tall ships coming, with all of our 250 anniversary. There's a lot of money that's going to be
circulating. About the biggest one, FIFA.
Yeah. FIFA, right? FIFA, right? So, Ricardo, don't think that this little transportation, a contract that you got for White Stadium, because there's a lot of money out there. Like, I don't know, there's a whole lot of money in this world, right? Let's really think about the big picture here, right? Like, I think that there are so many opportunities for the city to continue to advocate for people like you, right? As with our big sporting events that are coming down the pipeline with FIFA, we also have the tall ships coming down the pipeline. So I think that I want to be really clear in terms of my posture, because I never want anyone to walk out of this hearing thinking that because of my advocacy to reconsider how we're moving forward with White Stadium, that's taking money out of your pockets, right? Like, I really want to be clear that for me, the work is making sure that we're thinking about the full picture, and that we as a city are looking at to all the opportunities that our vendors, particularly our vendors of color, can have access to. And there's so many other things that are coming down the pipeline that if you're not connected, let's talk offline to make sure that you get plugged in, because there's a lot of money out here.
And I just want to echo everything you say. I am in complete agreement with you. And at the end of the day, it's about White Stadium will be moving forward. How does it move forward with us being involved and us winning these contracts? And that's what I care mostly about.
All right, thank you, Ricardo. Thank you so much. I want to go next to, I believe, Shane, is Aisha?
Yes, and then Melissa Hamill.
Okay, awesome. Okay, Aisha, thank you for your patience. You were initially going to be a panelist, and then there was some confusion, but here you are patiently waiting. Thank you so very much. Did Aisha leave instead of going off mute, did she leave by mistake? Aisha?
I'll try to move them back over.
Okay. And Larry has his hand up too. Okay, Larry, Larry has his hand up for some reason. Shane, I'm not sure which Larry.
I'm trying to bring them both over.
Okay, thank you. Aisha, thank you for your patience. You now have the floor.
Good afternoon, and I too am very appreciative to be a part of this conversation. I am the owner of First Armor, and I wanted to talk a little bit about my frustration as it relates to the Flaggers RFP. Number one, it was extremely hard to even find the RFP for starters, and then going through the questions that were actually being asked, you could tell that it was very much written for a particular company, and the company that received the award, which is Ed Davis's firm, which, as we've all talked about, is not a diverse firm. First Armor is a diverse firm, female-owned, Black-owned, and we already do the work that is required of what the RFP talked about. We hire Black and Brown people in the community. We hire disabled people in the community. We hire elders in the community. I was born and raised here in the community. And so it's a little unnerving to see that this type of opportunity, which is even bigger than just my company, because we don't have a capacity issue. We don't have from a capital or even experience. We've been in business for the last 12 years, so going on 13. So it's just seems like more of the same. And while I hear folks saying that things have changed, it's very disappointing that this type of opportunity is going to leave, a lot of individuals that this could be life-changing for them, making $40, $50 an hour. These jobs are not going to go to the city of Boston residents, and that's really what this should be about. Not going to, residents out in Lowell and Lawrence, not that we have anything against them. However, we know that in our communities of color, there's a disproportionate amount of jobs, and really jobs that really pay people a living wage. And so I just want to go on the record just saying the process was very cumbersome. And not only was the ball dropped, I think that there was definitely favoritism here. And I think, you made a comment earlier, Councilwoman, that when you see that there was only 2 people or 2 firms that apply, why don't we look at that? And then let's look at the process, and let's look at the language, right? Are we being equitable? And I think if we dialed back the needle, we would say no on all of that. And so, like I said, this is not about First Armor, but this is a bigger community issue that we need to resolve.
Thank you, Aisha, and you did stay within the 2 minutes. I just want to acknowledge that. And before I move on to the next, I just have a quick question for you. Normally that we don't do questions for testimony, but I'm not normal in that sense. But I'm just curious, did you ever get feedback from the city as to why you didn't receive it, what you could have done differently? Was there anything like that? Because I think that that's also an area that we can get better at, because people don't know what they want.
No, we were not given feedback, and I think even more so, there, even through the process, there was no interview process. For instance, most of the contracts that we bid on, privately, we go and we do a presentation, we have a conversation, we're able to answer any questions, we're able to clarify things, provide additional, information. There was no opportunity for that. This was a very one-sided, one-way conversation, and even the process of submitting it was extremely, I don't even want to go into those details, but it was not a fair process whatsoever.
Thank you. And I'm sorry that you went through that, but I do appreciate you putting it on the record and letting us know what your journey was. And again, even though my colleagues are not here, and scheduling and purposes, the great thing is that this hearing is recorded, so those who aren't here can go watch the tape at their own leisure, because if we do organize around whatever particular action, there is an opportunity for us to stand together as a council and to ask for reconsideration based on today's hearing. And so I'm going to be advocating for that. Hopefully the folks that we've been working with feel the same, and if we do, then we will bring it up for a vote, and we'll see what happens with that. Ed, I would love to work with the NAACP and drafting something that can get presented to the city councilors for reconsideration as we continue to have these conversations. So I just want, for those who are tuning in, put everybody on notice that I will be yet again trying all things to be able to restore trust in us. All right, so you've been warned. I'm moving on to the next. Who is the next one, Shane?
And we have Melissa Hamill as our last panelist.
Okay.
Last public testimony.
Okay, I see. So I'm not sure if people have signed up, but I know that there are other folks in the attendees list. So if you do want to speak, please make sure that you raise your hand so that we can promote you to panelist. Okay, Melissa, you also have been patiently waiting. You too have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Councilor Mejia. I first of all wanted to say my deep appreciation for this hearing. You've shown incredible leadership, Councilor Mejia, in this, and we are very appreciative. Also very appreciative of the NAACP, their presentation, because it's been a long time coming that we had this conversation. I wish that this conversation had happened 2-3 years ago, prior to all of this, where the community was actually engaged in a truthful and transparent way. But as we know, well, as I have found out myself, and I believe this has not been a transparent process. In fact, while I was listening to Chief Adowo speak, and he made a couple of comments that I was able to then go and double fact checked on some emails that I have, seen. And it's true that the RFP was in negotiation before November of 2022. The signed agreement, the Chief Irish and, sorry, let me take my notes here. Signed with the BUSP was in April of 2023. The public wasn't made aware of this RFP or of this agreement until July of 2023. So it was almost a year that had gone by between the time that things were starting to move with the city in negotiations and when the community was actually engaged. I don't see that as transparent community engagement. I'm sorry. And then also, there was a statement made by Casey earlier about how the city needs to review multiple contracts before awarding a contract, and that's great. But why weren't the taxpayer afforded that same consideration? Why aren't we allowed to have multiple contracts, multiple plans, proposals brought before us before it's decided? And so, yes, this is a time for us to take a step back, take a deep breath. I feel like Mayor Wu and the city has an opportunity here to do the right thing by the community, to review what's gone on, and to actually engage us in a transparent way that is actually truthful and engaging, because right now I feel like that hasn't happened, and I'm not the only person. There's just too many problems with this proposal and this plan, and it's time for a reset. Thank you.
For that to happen.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. All right, I don't know who's off, someone is not on mute, but I see that we had Elena has, I believe, their hand up. And so again, if you want to speak and you have signed up for public testimony and you're in the waiting room and you want to speak, make sure that you raise your hand so that we can upgrade you to panelists. Okay, Elena.
I'll be really, really quick. It's just important to be mindful of the fact that Franklin Park was historically conceived as a fully public resource. And it's essential that we do all we can to prevent the privatization of lands that should remain in the public realm. So that's my statement.
You just made up for all the people who went over, Elena. Good job. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So are there any other folks that want to speak and has not been called on? I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak. Shane, do you see anybody? Everybody's good?
I think that's everybody, Madam Chair.
Okay. So if your hand did not go up, we're going to assume that you were here listening in. We did not get to unpack the issue of travel and tourism because we had Colette Phillips lined up to carry that piece. But I think it's important that we still give an opportunity to uplift her testimony. So I'm going to look for it and get her public testimony on the record. I think she makes some really good points, and so this is her testimony. I'd like to begin this letter this is on behalf of Colette Phillips. I would like to begin this letter by expressing my profound gratitude to Mayor Wu and Chief Shagun Idowu for their unwavering commitment to supporting small businesses, particularly women-owned enterprises in Boston. Their leadership and dedication have created unprecedented opportunities for small businesses to thrive, and I commend their efforts in fostering an inclusive and equitable economic landscape for all residents. As a small business owner myself, I have personally benefited from these initiatives and recognize the significant impact they have had on increasing participation and competition within Boston's procurement processes. Notably, women-owned businesses and small firms now hold the highest level and percentages of participation in the city's history, a milestone that reflects a commendable shift towards economic inclusion and diversity. However, despite these significant progressions, I know that both Chief Idowu and the mayor would agree that there's still so much more to be done to ensure opportunities are truly equitable and accessible to all. To this end, I would like to offer some suggestions and recommendations aimed at strengthening the city's procurement policies and fostering a more inclusive economic environment. 1, establishing consistent and transparent procurement policies across departments. One key area for improvement is the development of a unified and consistent procurement framework across all city departments. Currently, procurement processes can vary significantly from one department to another, which can create confusion and barriers for small and women-owned businesses seeking to participate. By standardizing procurement policies and procedures, the city can ensure transparency, fairness, and equitable opportunities for all vendors, regardless of the departments involved. This consistency would not only streamline the bidding process, but also build trust among small business owners who often face challenges navigating complex and disparate systems. A centralized approach would facilitate better outreach, education, and support small businesses aspiring to work with the city. 2, actively promote engagement and partnerships with BIPOC and women-owned business enterprises. Larger contractors and procurement entities can play a vital role in fostering economic inclusivity, and therefore I recommend that the city enforce policies that require and incentivize these entities to engage and partner with MWBEs, including women-owned and minority-owned businesses. For example, 25% of their scoring would depend on such partnerships, which would facilitate capacity building, mentorship, subcontracting opportunities, thereby creating a more equitable distribution of economic benefits. Ensuring that MWBEs are included as subcontractors or partners on large contracts will help bridge the gap between opportunity and participation. This approach aligns with best practices in equitable procurement and can serve as a model for other cities seeking to promote economic diversity. I would also like to recommend that we look to other diverse cities like Atlanta, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and DC to see how they handle their procurement. 3, oversight and accountability in procurement processes. It is crucial that the city establish a robust oversight mechanisms for organizations receiving any form of financial support, whether grants, subsidies, or other resources from city to state agencies. When these organizations participate in procurement, especially projects exceeding certain thresholds, i.e. $1 million, there should be clear requirements to include MWBEs and BIPOC-owned companies. Such oversight would ensure that public funds are used effectively to promote economic inclusion and that procurement opportunities reflect the demographic and economic realities of Boston's diverse communities. This oversight could also include regular reporting, audits, and accountability measures to monitor progress and address disparities. 4, inclusion of BIPOC-owned and small business city-generated procurement. In a city where 70% of industry workers are people of color, it is both fair and necessary that procurement opportunities within the city, that the industry reflect the community's demographics. I strongly recommend that the city incorporate specific goals and targets for BIPOC-owned businesses, particularly industries such as construction, technology, and services where disparities are most evident. Organizations like Meet Boston and other industry-specific groups can serve as valuable partners in this effort, helping to identify opportunities and facilitate connections between small BIPOC-owned firms and larger contractors or government projects. This target inclusion will foster an economic ecosystem where the community's economic engine is truly representative of its people. 5, and just for the record, she was supposed to be part of a panel, which is a little bit longer than the public testimony. I'm just reading it at the end for those who are tuning in. 5, foster collaboration and partnership between city agencies and community organizations. I would like to commend the partnership between the City of Boston, Councilor Mejia, and Council President Louis Jean for their collaborative efforts in advancing economic inclusion. Building on these strides, I believe that more can be achieved when government agencies, community organizations, and small businesses working together in the spirit of cooperation rather than competition and antagonism. By fostering stronger partnerships, the city can leverage the expertise, networks, and resources of community-based organizations to reach underrepresented entrepreneurs and provide targeted supports, mentorship, and capacity building initiatives. This collaborative approach will not only expand opportunities, but also ensure that economic development benefits all residents equitably. 6, support for small business participation during critical economic times. Small businesses are vital contributors to Boston's economy, generating significant revenue and creating jobs across neighborhoods. In times of economic uncertainty and systemic dismantling of initiatives aimed at promoting inclusion, it is crucial that small businesses, especially women-owned and BIPOC-owned firms, are given the opportunity and the support to participate fully in city contracts. This includes setting aside specific procurement opportunities for small businesses, providing technical assistance and mentoring programs, and ensuring that bidding processes are accessible and fair. Protecting and promoting small businesses during these challenging times is essential for maintaining resilient and inclusive local economy. In conclusion, I want to thank Chief Idowu for his continued leadership in fostering inclusive, equitable, and vibrant economic environment. Small businesses, particularly women-owned, BIPOC-owned firms, are the backbone of our neighborhoods and our economy. Their equitable approach in city procurement process is not only a matter of fairness, but also a strategic investment in the diverse and dynamic future of Boston. I sincerely appreciate your consideration for these recommendations and look forward to continued progress in making Boston City an opportunity that is accessible to all. Thank you for giving me this time and for your commitment. Colette A.M. Phillips, the CEO of Colette Phillips Communication Incorporated and the founder of Get Connected and the GK Fund. That was longer than a public testimony, and that is because Colette initially was going to be one of our panelists. So with that, unless there are any other folks signed up for public testimony, I see that Casey did keep her word and stay, and I'm hoping that Chief Idowu and his team will take a listen to some of these amazing recommendations and some of the things that we still heard, and take them to task and make them happen. So I am going to transition into my closing remarks, and if you could just give me a quick minute, 1 second. My apologies, everyone. I wanted to just note that this hearing on docket 0175 is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for participating. See y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Central staff. Great job. Thank you, everybody.